radio for the masses.
Headline edition, July 8, 1947. The Army Air Forces has announced that a flying disc has been found and is now in the possession of the Army.
If the game is rigged, change the game. Game changer.
I occasionally think how quickly our differences worldwide would vanish if we were facing an alien threat from outside this world.
This is Fade to Black with your host, Jimmy Church, on the Game Changer Radio Network and KGRA, the Global Radio Alliance.
I need your help to get to the year 1985.
You're listening to Fade to Black with Jimmy Church on the Game Changer Network.
All right, welcome, Fade to Black. Bespoke radio for the masses. Yeah, man. Oh, yeah. Tonight, it's Wednesday, May 9th, 2018. 129 days into the new year, just 236 days left. We are live from a bunker somewhere in downtown Burbank, California. And I would like to welcome everybody listening all around the world, all across the United States. Hither and thither, to and fro, back and forth, up and down, east and west, north and south, far and near. This is Fade to Black for KJCR, the Game Changer Network, and KGRA, the Planet. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. What is cracking, everybody? How you doing? Good evening. Tonight, it's going to be one of those shows, guaranteed. I guarantee I do. Tonight, very special guest, Jason Louv is here. And we'll talk about his explosive new book, John Dee and the Empire of Angels, Enochian Magick, and the Occult Roots of the Modern World. Yeah, and it is all that, too. The title just, it gives you a glimpse of what this book is all about. I've got it right here. Boom. Weighs about 15 pounds, by the way. I was talking to Jason about it. It's a weapon. Well printed. The illustrations are really good, too. Color. Really nice. And he'll be joining us at the bottom of the hour. And I know we're going to run out of time tonight and run straight into overtime. I gave him that warning. I see all of that coming. So that's what we're doing tonight. Jason Louv is here. Tomorrow night is another Fader night. Not just another Fader night. Because tomorrow night we're going to have John Rappaport here in his No More Fake Newsroom Live. And then Nick Pope is back to take your phone calls. So we're going to do that tomorrow night. It's going to be a great Fader night and a great ending to the week. And so that's wow. And I was just talking to Rita right before the show, and I was, how did we manage to put this week together? You know, how did that happen? And she goes, wait till you see what we're doing next week. And I don't even know. I don't know what she's got planned, but apparently she wants to outdo herself. But what a week this week on Fade to Black. You can follow us on Twitter at JChurchRadio. At JChurchRadio. That's pretty good. All right, man. You know, John, I got to retweet that. There it is. That's pretty funny. Thank you for all the dancing gifts. You guys just know how to start off the show every night. And you know, that's, oh man, The Great Escape. Steve McQueen over the fence. And that's coming in from Mark Tarana over in Australia. Okay, thank you guys. Follow us on Twitter at JChurchRadio. That's what you want to do. Hashtag F2B is the sandbox where everybody hangs out. And I say it each night, but you've got to come over and witness it for yourself. It's pretty amazing to see. But we burn through a few thousand tweets a night on the show. I don't burn through 3,000 tweets. You guys do. And the conversation is just amazing. So come over at J Church Radio, hang out with us. Hashtag F2B is the sandbox, and get involved in the conversation. It's pretty cool. And let's see. If you have any questions or comments tonight, you will, of course. During the show, you can post it in one of the chat rooms. You can send me an email, jimmy@jimmychurchradio.com. But you can also post it at hashtag F2BQ on Twitter. Fade to Black Questions. Yes, Fade to Black Questions, where Mark Tarana just posted another Great Escape GIF. Okay, there you go. Him in solitary confinement for that month. That, with the baseball, Steve McQueen, one of the great movies of all time. Okay, email. I got that out of the way. Where are we at? Breaking news. Big time breaking news, actually. North Korea pulled the trigger today. No, that's putting it the wrong way. North Korea relented today, and after months of anticipation and drama, North Korea has released 3 American detainees, and it went down. Mike Pompeo was over in South Korea and went up to North Korea, to Pyongyang. And 3 men, Kim Dong-chul, Kim Hak-song, and Tony Kim, walked on their own from a van onto the plane of Mike Pompeo. Now, it was wheels up in 1 hour, apparently, and they didn't know what was going on, but they did get released. They jumped on the plane, and Pompeo met with Kim Jong-un. And he came out of the meeting with a fingers crossed sign when he was asked if there was any good news. And then a North Korean emissary came to the hotel shortly after that to say that the detainees were being freed. The 3 men finally left custody at 7:45 p.m. local time, and by 8:42, an hour later, they were flying home. As soon as the plane cleared North Korean airspace, Pompeo called President Trump to inform him of the releases, with all of the men apparently in good health. And at that point, officials notified their families. That's a holy crap moment right there. And they are on their way home. I had read some stuff earlier today that Kim Jong-un, the North Koreans, the news agency there, released a statement saying, I'm paraphrasing, saying something similar to, President Trump asked for the release, and so we did it. Wow. Right? Wow. Just absolutely incredible. The progress going on with North Korea is happening so quickly. We just need to grab hold of ourselves. I don't think they're going to meet at the DMZ, Kim Jong-un and Donald Trump. I think it may be Singapore. It may be there. But I think that's a great idea. And the reason why, if I was putting this together, I wouldn't want to look like we were going there to meet Kim Jong-un. Right, you want Kim to leave the country too as well. You've got to go and meet. I think that's the way it should be, and it's for both sides, that kind of symbol of effort. Right? Okay. So anyway, there you go, and we'll wait for the big summit that should be next. And, okay, a couple of things really quick on Stellar. In the next, I announced this last night, in the next 24, 48 hours or so, we've got a big release coming on Stellar. And you can certainly go and register now. You can go to alpha.onstellar.com. You can go and you can register and get going. Today, I registered an old coworker of mine, a friend of mine, Don, and it was just so fun to have him register with such ease, and he got right on and started doing his thing. It was pretty cool. So it's ready to go. But these these changes that we are doing, you're going to have a news feed that's just about ready to go. Some more security stuff has been addressed. Registration is being addressed, and how you register and how you do your password and things. So all of that is being addressed. And then the news feed. And then we got a couple of sneak features that I just, everybody's been asking for the news feed. So I'm just letting you know it's priority one. It's ready. We just need to make sure that it's ready, but it's ready. And so that'll be in the next 24 to 48 hours. And we will do both an email, and you'll get a notification and an article posted right there on OnStellar announcing it. Okay? So that is here. So go and register. Get ready. You can use the promo code Jimmy. If you use the promo code Jimmy, you don't have to. But if you use the promo code Jimmy, you will get 15 bonus tokens. Right? So when you sign up to OnStellar, you get 10 Stellar tokens, OnStellar tokens. And that'll be right there in your wallet. But if you use the promo code Jimmy, you get 15 extra. You're going to have 25 there. Yep. Okay? Just to let you know, my wallet says 10. Rita used my promo code. She's got more tokens than I do. So go and get your tokens. Go get signed up right now. It's faster, cooler, better. Wallets, tokens, everything is there. We'll be introducing the blockchain as soon as we can. We'll be jumping into beta here, and there you go. There are literally thousands and thousands of people on Stellar right now as I speak. And if I said last night, just send me a message. Send me a message on Stellar, and I'll respond to it. And I got flooded. It was just so funny. So I'm going to do it again tonight. All right? If you're on Stellar right now, shoot me a message. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You guys are crazy. I'll do it. I'll respond to every single message. You might have to wait during the break for most of those. But OnStellar is just amazing. You do want to go and check out what everybody is doing. Look at you guys. Yep, I'll name you all right now. Andrew, Tom, Do, Mark, hello, and the ones that are underneath there I can't get to, and I don't want to close these out. Let's see. Let's see who's over. I can't keep up. Karen. I can't roll into these. Okay, so anyway, I'll respond to everybody and say hello right there on Stellar. Okay? alpha.onstellar.com. All right, now some other big news. I just want to let you guys know that the ECETI, the Soul Tech Gathering that we are doing up there is going to be incredible. And it's going on in August, right after Contact in the Desert. And go and sign up. Today, this is how it went down. And it was just one of those conversations. So, I'm talking to Corey Good about, ECETI and how cool it is. And he's like, man, I want to go to ECETI. I said, do you? Yeah, man, I want to go see. Really? You want to go? Yeah. All right. Come on. So Corey Good is going to be with us as our guest up at ECETI. So there you go. That'll be Friday and Saturday up at ECETI. He's going to be hanging out as one of you, a friend, just hanging out up at ECETI. And he just wants to go and he wants to hang out and meet all of the Fadernauts. He's probably going to weasel his way onto a couple of stages there and interrupt things and say hello to everybody. But he's going to be there to hang out and have conversations with everybody. And also, can you imagine, this is what's really cool, I cannot wait for the Skywatch at the Field of Dreams on Friday night with Corey, because you never know what might happen, right? Right? Are you with me on this? So there you go. Go and get your tickets and info. We're only selling 300 for the Fadernauts, but I just thought it would be really fun to have Corey come and hang out with all of you and make it special. And I was thinking about just surprising everybody with it, but I want to share that conversation that we had today about it. So that's it. The cat's out of the bag. Come and hang out with us up at ECETI Ranch, August 9th through the 12th. SoulTechGathering.com. Our next event's coming up 2 weeks. 2 weeks. June 1st through the 3 weeks. 2 weeks, 2.5 weeks. June 1st through the 4th, 2018. Contact in the Desert. Indian Wells, Palm Springs at the Renaissance Resort and Spa. We got our new booth designed. We're done with that. I can't wait for everybody to see it. On Stellar's going to be there with us. So is Stillness in the Storm and Modern Masters. We're going to have a big footprint all together right there in the center. So come and hang out with us. I mean, everybody's going to be there. You know, John and Dana from Modern Masters, right? Justin, Stillness of the Storm, Teresa. Everybody's going to be there. So that'll be the general meeting point for everybody. We're going to have a lot of the speakers and leaders that are with On Stellar and, of course, Fade to Black stopping by and meeting everybody and, you know, taking pictures and hanging out. Okay, so that's June 1st through the 4th, Contact in the Desert. All right, where am I at? Don't forget about our podcast, by the way. We have over 850 archive shows right there. Just click on the podcast banner at jimmychurchradio.com. It's just $2 a month. And you can also become a Fadernaut in our membership section of the sites. Very cool. You get the bunker cam. You get commercial-free downloadable archives. If you renew your Game Changer membership, you're going to get the new Fade to Black t-shirts. You get autographed hats. I'll sign the t-shirts, too. It's very cool. You get a private email to me. And there you go. It's all over in our membership section on Fade to Black on jimmychurchradio.com. And there you go. Let's get our show cracking. I wanted to jump ahead right now into something that is important for me to talk about. I want to make sure that I get all of this in. Because, just in case, if you haven't already figured it out, Google owns planet Earth. All of it. Yep. Yep. Facebook owns the part that Google lets them. I'm not casting about these words around willy-nilly. All right? Listen to what Uncle Jimmy has to say. Let me throw some numbers out at you. As of February 2018, Chrome, February 2018, as of February 2018, which is, I was just looking at the calendar. Today's May 9th, right? 3 months ago. As of February 2018, Chrome is 77.9% of the world market. 10 years ago, in 2008, what was it? Well, I'm glad you asked. They only had 3.6%. Back in 2008, Internet Explorer and Firefox had 90% of the market, and they split it down the middle, 45% each, with Chrome at 3.6%. Today, Internet Explorer is down to 4.1%. Tell me Microsoft isn't freaking out. Firefox is hanging in there with 11.8%. Safari, as of today, is still the same 3.3% that they were back in 2008. No change. They have been a rock-steady 3% every month for 10 straight years. Never made it to 3.4, by the way. It never really went down to 2.9. It's just 3%. And that's interesting, isn't it? If the trend continues, Chrome will have over 90% of the entire internet worldwide next year. Now, you need to wrap your head around that for a second. Google is the number one site in the world. Has been for many years, no surprise. And it's not going to change anytime soon, if ever. Number two is YouTube. Of course, owned by Google. Right? Now, let's start to throw some stuff around. Google, the number one site used before and after searching what? YouTube. YouTube. One feeds the other. Now, you have to understand what I am suggesting here. Well, it's fact, but I want you to understand what I am suggesting. Google is number one. Number two is YouTube. So YouTube sits there, and the number one site that everybody is at before they go to YouTube is Google. The number one site after that, after YouTube, is Google. Do you understand? Think about it. They've really got it figured out. It's very, very profitable. One feeds the other. A vicious, vicious circle. Think about it. You want to see something? You search Google. YouTube link pops up. You click on that. Then you see something in the video. And then you go back and you search Google. And then you find another video. And then you go back to YouTube. It's perfection. Today, Google has over 90% share of mobile devices. Not in the U.S., by the way. In the world. By the end of 2017, just 5 months ago, 46.8% of the world's population access the internet. Of that, Google owns 90%. From every angle, from searching to advertising, and of course, entertainment with YouTube. Of the top 20 search words worldwide, the top 20 search words worldwide, all of them, wait for it, all of them were done on Google. The crumbs are thrown to the almighty Facebook with 2.5 billion users, which is big. It's really big. I talk about it all the time. But they're still 1 billion behind Google. They're 1 billion behind YouTube. You need to understand what is really going on here. The two sites used before and after Facebook, you guessed it, Google and YouTube. The two sites after visiting Facebook are Google and YouTube. Video is in Facebook. We know that. It's obvious. And it's YouTube, of course, sure. But it's all done by design. You do it because it's easy. But it's all done to have control of every aspect of everything. Your habits, your life, and of course, getting to your wallet. This clicking cycle is done by everyone on the net. Now, before you ask yourself, yeah, I believe it. I done it. I haven't done it myself. I did it earlier today. And that's what you're saying right now. Those words just went through your head. Well, you and virtually everybody else on the entire planet did. Everyone, every single person with access to the net, one way or another, on this planet, visited Google and YouTube and did a drive-by on Facebook and used the Chrome browser while doing it. Think about the impact of these words. It is a total global domination. When I started talking about Facebook when right before Zucks went into Washington, did his testimony for those couple of days. And you start to understand the numbers that I was throwing around. 2.5 billion users. There's only 7.5 billion people on this planet. How is it possible that a social media network can have that kind of monopoly and domination of your life? And their goal is to make sure that you stay on that platform all day long. It's the first thing you do when you wake up, and it's the last thing you do when you go to bed, and you do it all day long. Zuckerberg, no, man, we're not, we don't do that. No dopamine triggers, man. It's not about that. It's about the community. No. Now, when you look at what YouTube, who is ahead of Facebook by 1 billion, and Google, who is right there, and Google owns the two, and they are both wrapped up around Facebook. The same ads, the same triggering, the same data mining, everything is flown back and forth and in between each other, and it's done to do one thing, and that is to dominate your life. The numbers, the real numbers, as I started to peel this apart today, some of them are frightening. Google, are you ready for this? Google, and the numbers, they've gone up so much. They've gone up so much that nobody can really get. I watched a Google ticker today, a live ticker on who is searching keywords right now, and you've never seen anything move this fast in your life. Brrr, right? Are you ready? 1 million searches per minute. Think about that. Last year, 500,000. 10 years ago, Google, 50,000. Today, think 1 million a minute. And how many minutes are in a day? You do the math. Well, it's turning out the number is between 3.5 and 4.5 billion searches a day, and there's only 3.5 billion users of the internet. It's scary. So if you don't think that Google owns this planet and what is left is owned by Facebook, and between the two of them, they reach out and touch everybody. Perfection. They pulled it off. 10 years. This is Fade to Black. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. Our guest tonight, Jason Louv. His book, John Dee and the Empire of Angels, is incredible. We're going to discuss that tonight and a whole lot more. And I can already tell you're going to make these requests. This isn't the first night that Jason is going to be on this show. We've got to do part 1, 2, 3, and 4. Tonight's part 1. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. Follow me on Twitter at JChurchRadio. You can follow Jason Louv at Jason Louv. The links are up in Twitter. I'll be right back. Stay with us.
You're listening to Jimmy Church, Fade to Black.
Fade to Black will now pause for alien identification.
The station that talks the net. KGRA Radio. When you take the beans from Central America with dashes of Indonesian and African mixed in and then roast it to the dark side of Fade to Black, you create the ultimate brew of fringe. Introducing the Fade to Black blend from Rivermoon Coffee. Yes, Rivermoon's darkest customized roast was created for the love of Fade to Black. The alchemy of masterful roasting and smoking the beans is in every sip of this full-bodied, dark Java. I need my coffee dark, deep, with distinct bittersweet chocolate highlights, just like the bunker. Leaning further into the darkness of the roast is Fade to Black Blend from River Moon Coffee. Just click on the banner at jimmychurchradio.com and use the promo code F2BBLEND for 15% off of your order today. Go Beckley Teppy.
Natural Health Solutions with Chris and Ronnie.
Hey, Ronnie, how you doing?
Great, Chris.
Now, you're the CEO of GetTheTea.com, right?
Yes, I am.
What is GetTheTea.com? I mean, is this tea you buy in a store?
Well, no, it's not. Life Change Tea is just that, life-changing. Life Change Tea is an herbal tea that gently cleanses your body from intruders.
What do you mean by intruders?
Well, intruders are toxins, chemicals, GMOs, heavy metals, and more. They're in our food, in our water, in our air we breathe.
Seriously?
Yeah, seriously.
And Life Change Tea will help you with removing these, as you say, intruders?
That's right, Chris.
Are there side effects with this tea?
Well, you might lose a little weight. When you clean your colon, you lose weight, you feel better, and you have more energy.
Wow. Ronnie, where can people purchase Life Change Tea?
Oh, that's easy. GetTheTea.com. That's GetTheTea.com.
Ronnie, I want to thank you for being on the show. People, don't forget, GetTheTea.com.
9 out of 10 geneticists agree.
Fade to Black is not your father's radio show on the Game Changer Radio Network and KGRA, The Planet.
Win big with KGRA this summer. Tickets and hotel accommodations to the biggest conferences, autographed books and DVDs, chances to win all-inclusive conference cruises, and private dinners with your favorite KGRA hosts. Click the contest tab at kgraradio.com for your chance to win big this summer. Your contact for the best alternative talk radio on the planet. kgraradio.com.
Hi, this is Rob Reiner from Anvil, and you're listening to JimmyChurchRadio.com. What's up? I'm Chris. What up? This is Kyle Manson. You're listening to Jimmy Church Radio.
All right, welcome back. Fade to Black. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. Tonight, Jason Louv is here. This segment is proudly brought to you by Life Change Tea. Use the promo code FADER, F-A-D-E-R, when you order. You'll get free shipping. Click on the banners over at jimmychurchradio.com. Tomorrow night is Fader night. We're going to have Nick Pope in here to man the phones with me and take your phone calls all night, so that'll be a lot of fun. John Rappaport's going to be here, too, tomorrow night with his No More Fake Newsroom Live. And open lines. So please join us for that. Tonight is Jason Louv. I'm very excited about the show. He is the author of 8 books, including the one we're going to discuss tonight, John Dee and the Empire of Angels. Also, Generation Hex, Thee Psychic Bible. And as a journalist, he has covered surveillance, international trade, and the dark side of technology for Vice News, Boing Boing, Motherboard, and many more. And as a futurist and a strategist, he has worked on Buzz Aldrin's international campaign to colonize Mars, Google's artificial intelligence program, and in many more strange and wonderful places. He lives right here in Los Angeles. In fact, he's a neighbor of ours. And I would like to welcome, for the first time to Fade to Black, are you ready? Jason Louv. Jason, good evening. How are you?
Hey, Jimmy. What's up, man?
Yeah,
Doing great. How are you?
Oh, man. Okay. Calm down, Jason. Calm down.
Well, so we got an exciting topic ahead of us.
Yeah, we do, man. We do. And before we get started, this won't be the last time that you're on Fade to Black, but it is the first time. So you get the first-time guest disclaimer, which is it's just you and I sitting on my couch having a conversation as friends. And where the conversation starts, it starts. Where it ends. But we're going to end as friends. You ready?
Sounds good.
I don't know. Normally, I'm geared up and ready to go. This book is incredible. And there are 100 directions that we can go into to kick off the discussion of this book. So before we do that, where did your interest start in the subject? I have seen and read a lot of your stuff, and you cover so much material, but something happened in your life. Everything was normal, and then you took a left or right-hand turn. What happened?
What happened? Well, yeah, it's been about over 2 decades now since I first started getting interested in magic and the occult, and there's a lot of angles on that. There's a lot of reasons why, and I think anyone who's into this stuff will tell you that it just kind of happens. It comes out of the blue and sideswipes you, as it were, and that kind of jumps you. And that seems to be what happens with this stuff. People get fascinated with it. But for me, it was frankly just growing up and not being satisfied, as I think probably most people are, just not being satisfied with the answers that I was getting about what reality is, about what my potential was as a person, about what humans were capable of. And seeing that the universe is infinite and vast and full of mystery, but all the people, not all, but many of the people around me were content to, the most mystery they had, in their life was, what was the special going to be at Applebee's on Friday?
Right.
And I knew there had to be more. But you know what? To be honest, when I first started getting into this stuff, I was very skeptical, very almost cynical about it. And to be totally honest, I started to get into this stuff because I wanted to disprove it. And what happened was exactly the opposite. And that started a life path for me, if you will, a quest where, I've spent 20 years investigating every angle of, shamanism or esoteric spirituality or system for engaging with the deeper parts of reality or the deeper part of the human consciousness. And it's been my life because there's so much there. There's so much on offer, not just in our culture, but it's been hidden in our culture,
right,
and kept secret. But in other cultures, it's out in the open, and so it's just become a lifelong adventure for me.
Yeah, and you write about that in the book too, and I like your approach to that. Again, we'll visit that in a second, but I do agree with you. That for me, I thought UFOs and aliens which I really enjoyed, and I studied it growing up, but I thought that was enough. And then I remember 30 years ago, somebody mentioning the mystery schools. And I was like, okay, I'm going right there. I'm going right there. Whatever that means, I need to, and it started to open up these doors. But you have to be skeptical. If you go into this not, with a general dose of skepticism, and then you're going to go down roads that you don't need to go down, and believe some stuff that you don't need to put your beliefs into, and this world is full of that, and certainly the mystery schools and lost history and ancient history has proven that to us time and time again, hasn't it?
Absolutely. And I, in my books, constantly urge people to take a skeptical attitude towards this stuff. I think that people should investigate this with all of the cognitive tools of critical thinking and scientific thinking. And unfortunately, it's not even that people don't do that with this subject, but they don't do it with a lot of subjects in life in general. Yeah, I think that you have to walk a very narrow road with this stuff, because if you fall too far on one side, you fall into believing stuff that's not true, and then if you fall too far on the other side, then you just shut down to any other possibilities of life, and you miss out on the whole spiritual side of life.
And you may not have any friends too. If you know what I mean, you can't do that in either direction. The extremes, I mean.
Totally. Well, I like what you just said about belief, about what we have to be careful what we put our belief into, because one of the conclusions I've really come to in my life is that, the phrase I use is belief is the currency we spend to make things real. And I also think, our belief, when we put our belief and our attention on things, we make them real, at least for ourselves. We bring them into our life. We make them into an object of focus, and then that determines the quality of our life. So I think that one of the great gifts of spirituality and magic, if you will, if you want to use that word, is learning that, coming to that understanding that you're in control, you're in charge of what you invest your attention and belief in, whether it's something supernatural or something totally mundane, but you're in the driver's seat of your life. And that's one of the great, messages of the mystery teachings. That's the great mystery. Who's driving the car? Well, you are, of course.
Well, there's you bring up one point in the book that really opened up my eyes, and I knew this, but everybody's like, okay, what did he say, Jimmy? Well, let me just preempt it with this. The way that you presented it allowed me to understand it much more, and so I'm going to paraphrase, but I want you to expand on how you put this thought together. Which is this. Today, if somebody says that they are channeling or that they are in contact or that they have a spirit being or an angel or whatever, it's nothing but ridicule. Well, I mean, from the masses. But we put all of, nearly all of the world, one way or another, has religious beliefs. And with Christianity, with Islam, even Jews and the Jewish faith, all channeled the information that is in those books, and we accept that as dogma, right? And we're okay with that, but we're not okay with somebody that says today I'm channeling or I'm speaking to somebody on the other side. You can't have it both ways, but yet we're forced to have it both ways. Where did you come up with that thought process?
Well, yeah, I mean, it's crazy, right? I mean, if you take just the big three, right? Christianity, Islam, and Judaism, right? All of these religions claim to, at least in part, have channeled the source of the religion from angels. Not just any old being, but angels specifically. Although actually Christianity is the least channeled religion, because outside of the Revelation is channeled. But of course the Gospels are at least purport to be firsthand accounts of an actual person giving teaching. But of course Judaism comes, the source of the primary source of Judaism is Moses talking to God in the burning bush and, channeling the 10 Commandments. Right. And Islam was at least allegedly delivered by the Archangel Gabriel to, in a channeled text, the Quran, to the Prophet Muhammad in a cave. Right. And so, but if you put all those three religions together, yeah, I mean, we're talking about 61% of the planet.
And then we got to throw in Salt Lake.
Okay, yeah, and even more, right? Well, that's what I mean. That's just the big three. Now, if we take all the other religions, it's almost the whole planet, right? Right. I just didn't want to leave out, Salt Lake. We got to, let them get represented. But it's totally. So true, though. And the way that you wrote, I had to sit back and go, okay. And then we have John Dee, which again, here we have. Somebody that, we'll get into who John Dee is in a second, but and his background. But John Dee did just that, and he got ripped apart about it. And he had the greatest CV, right, and resume before that, and then suddenly, and it's like it's not okay. Well, absolutely, and I do want to put a counterpoint to that, which is that I think that it's perhaps good that, for our culture, that we've adopted such a materialist, rationalist, scientific focus, because, the birth of science, which, by the way, John Dee is also responsible for, I see the birth of science as one of the crowning achievements of humanity and liberated humanity in many ways from believing in superstition and fear. But that said, when we realize that so much of the world derives their beliefs from what they at least believe to be channeled writings, whether you personally believe that or not, and personally I'm agnostic on it, but whether or not you believe those are valid or not, you have to understand that This is how so many of our fellow human beings on this planet have constructed their belief system. So we can't even begin to approach understanding the cultures of the world without at least giving them enough respect to take their beliefs seriously as they present them on their own terms, at least to the point where we can have an honest and respectful conversation about it and not, just reject their beliefs out of hand, because otherwise we're talking at cross purposes with each other. So that's my feeling on it. I don't think that we can fully understand world cultures without understanding their beliefs. But in terms of John Dee, this is a fascinating... John Dee really stands at the crossroads of magic and science, and that's one of the reasons that he's so fascinating, in that, as you said, he had this amazing CV where he was the scientific and astrological advisor to Elizabeth I. He was responsible in part for creating the English intelligence services. He's the guy who came up with the phrase, the British Empire. He coined that phrase, or actually he said an angel delivered that phrase to him in an occult ritual. But he laid out the naval schematics that were necessary to create the British Empire. He was the person who brought mathematics, higher mathematics, geometry to the British public for the first time by introducing Euclid's Elements for the first time in English. He developed all kinds of optics and astronomy theories, and on and on and on and on. He was really the Stephen Hawking of his day, or perhaps the Da Vinci. He was a true Renaissance man.
Yeah, and you left
between the age of 50 and after the age of about 50,
right,
he decided to dedicate almost all of his time to attempting to contact angels in occult rituals, which he did, nonstop every day for 10 years. And it would be comparable to, for instance, in our time period, if Stephen Hawking at the age of 50 had said, I'm really happy that I'm the most recognized scientist in the world and everyone respects me and I have the ears of the leaders of the free world and all this. But you know what? I'm going to dedicate the next 10 years of my life to taking DMT and trying to talk to aliens. It would have been like that.
It would have been like that. I think you left off the best part of his CV, though. He was the original James Bond.
How could we forget? Yes, his code name was 007 in the British intelligence services, which is where Ian Fleming got that.
Isn't that incredible? I mean, and think of it. So that his importance, and certainly his importance during Queen Elizabeth's reign, his importance cannot be discounted here. It was extraordinary, his impact and his contributions to all of those things. He wasn't really a specialist, in my opinion. He wanted to, in one thing, he wanted to excel in just about everything, and he managed to pull that off, which is an extraordinary life.
It really is. And what I say in the book is that John Dee, in my belief, is really one of the people that's responsible for the world we live in now. If you consider that he created the fundamental math behind the British Empire and the idea that it should happen, and then, of course, which became the biggest empire the world has ever seen, the empire in which the sun never sets, and that out of the British Empire came the American Empire, and that not only that, but he also really laid the groundwork that led to the birth of modern science. Well, that's pretty much our whole modern world, or a whole lot of it. But the thing is, he was so weird in a way. I mean, he had so many interests, but also, he got so into, he did this whole decade or 2 decades of just pure occult research that he's just been buried in history. I mean, his reputation suffered greatly. He was written out of the official history or kind of cast to the sidelines because people just thought he was too weird, and they didn't want to be associated with that because they wanted people to take them seriously, whether we're talking about the early scientists or even, more recent historians who have written about him, really kind of refused to look at this side of him. And because he doesn't fit the accepted narrative of history, he's been kind of left in the dustbin of history, and that's a shame because I think when we really look closely at Dee, we're looking at the person who kind of wrote the computer code that the modern world runs on, in my opinion.
The other part of John, and you and I were talking about this earlier today, for fans of history like myself, you see his name referenced so much, but then you go to research John Dee and you hit dead ends, and what you do find, and there's a lot of it out there, but a lot of it is conflicting, and you don't know which one to choose. It's a very difficult thing to research John Dee. How did you pull that off?
Well, absolutely. And it's so difficult that I think anyone who starts to get really into this and research it asks themselves the question at some point, why have I never heard this story? Why has this been this been kept from me on purpose, perhaps? Like, why are we not told in high school that, the age of empires comes out of an occult ritual to contact angels? I mean, it's just so bizarre, but it is what happened, or what people believed was what happened. But I wrote this book for one reason, or, the primary reason was because I wanted to understand the subject, because just like you, I got into it, I started to research it, and I kept hitting a lot of fragmentary information. Because the deal with Dee is, on one side, for the most part, we've had historians, academic historians, and mainstream historians of science who have written about him and done biographies, but have really kind of tried to marginalize his occult stuff and say, well, he was deluded, he was older, he got taken for a ride by a psychic, and they try to downplay that, and which is a shame, because it was totally central to his life. And on the other hand, we have occult writers who have written about Dee, who've written brilliant stuff about his occult work, but they also take it out of context of all of his other work. And the thing about Dee is, it was all one thing for him and his contemporaries, the Hermetic magicians. It was all one thing for them. This was the time in history where it was still possible to know everything. And what I mean by that is that you could still read all the published material that was available at that time, because there really wasn't a whole lot.
Right.
And so the intellectuals of this time, they just wanted to understand reality. They wanted to understand the big picture, the whole enchilada. And so there was no separation of disciplines between them, whether it was optics or astronomy or the occult or philosophy. It was all the same thing for them. They just wanted to know what was going on.
The other thing, I just want to bring this up really quick, and then we'll move on, and we got to head to a break. But the speed of light, and to have that kind of vision, not only in a scientific concept, but to have that kind of vision to think outside of the box. Who would have even thought about that kind of concept? But that's where Dee was coming from. It's extraordinary.
It really is. Optics was Dee's focus, and he hints in his writings at early stirrings of the idea of the speed of light. Even there's parts of his writings where it seems like he's talking about the potential of solar panels, or even putting solar panels in space. And the really crazy thing, the thing that just completely blows my mind, is that he applied all of this to the occult. And he thought that, for instance, we use a telescope. These things wouldn't be invented till later, but of course, we all know that you can use a telescope to see out there into the great beyond, and you can use a microscope to see really small things, bacteria, all that. And these, rely on glass, optical glass. Well, Dee thought that you could use a scrying ball, which is what we now know as a crystal ball, to directly investigate the spiritual world. And he thought that you would be able to see the attributes of God and spirits manifested in actual light waves. It's a really psychedelic theory and a way to see the world.
And why do you think, you touched upon this earlier, but let's do this now before the break. Why do you think that history did choose to erase him? Was it the occult or the magic or the angels aspect of it, or the dangers of science too as well? And of course, the connections to the monarchy. But it could have been all or none of it. I don't know. But why do you think they chose to erase him?
I think it's all of it, but I actually think there's a pretty simple and mundane answer, which is that when the Royal Society happened in the century following Dee, which was the early group that became the first scientists in London, They were all aware of Dee. They all looked to him as kind of their intellectual grandfather. They were aware of his experiments, but they kind of wrote him. They didn't as much. They kind of left him to the side because they were in a perilous political position. They were just trying to get science accepted. Science itself was heretical enough. They didn't want to fight two battles to also have to defend the occult.
Right.
Yeah, that's the deal, I think. That's why they kind of left him out.
And then there could be another side to it, and I'll throw this out. Alchemy and the mystery schools and some of these things, occult, are not to be seen or to be discussed. And he was getting a little bit too visible. So maybe that was part of it, where they needed some of these things that he was so accurate that they probably didn't want this information out there either. I think that could be something that could play into it. I mean, there's a reason why it's called occult, right?
Oh, yeah. Well, look, I mean, Dee later when he was talking to the angels, the angels that they were talking to allegedly wanted everyone in the world to be able to make direct contact with angels outside of the bounds of the Catholic Church. And the Catholic Church was not fond of this idea at all. And in fact, Dee and Kelly had to run for their lives. Maybe we'll touch on this later on, but we're constantly running for their lives from Jesuit agents who wanted to lure them to the Vatican and probably torture and kill them. So it was a real fight and a kind of a hidden war going on. And the reason was, the whole promise of Magick, the pitch of Magick is, if you will, even today, is that it could allow you perhaps to make direct contact with God or angels or spiritual beings on your own without having to go through a church and, give money to them and submit to what they say. And that was a dangerous idea at the time. It's still a dangerous idea.
Well, what about, was it Dee who said that the angels told him to stop? Was it?
So Dee was working with Edward Kelly, who was a psychic. Dee could not, he was a very intellectual. He couldn't make contact with these beings himself. So he needed to rely on psychics that he worked with, or scryers as they were called, to kind of, more left-brained people to go into those trance states, that intuitive flow, in order to get into those states. And, the guy he was working with, Edward Kelly, had some, he had a lot of personal issues, and he was often, he wanted to stop quite a bit. It was too much for him many times. And he was just getting burnt out and overloaded by all of this information, all this angelic information coming through these rituals. And he was often begging Dee to stop because he thought it was too much for him. But Dee kept pushing him and pushing him and pushing him until finally he kind of snapped about 7 years into it.
Yeah, plus, and that's the other part of getting silenced, right? If you can make direct contact with angels, why do you need the church? So maybe they had something to do with it too. Could be. But he was certainly a difficult thing for me to research and try to get something very accurate out there. And the more that I dived into John Dee, and this is 25 years ago, I was very impressed with the fact that it's a rabbit hole. Right? You just can't get to the real truth. At least I felt like I was being stonewalled at every turn.
Oh, absolutely. It's like every time, you unwrap a layer of the mystery of Dee, you see, it's like you unveil a whole new layer of reality, and every step of the way it shakes and sometimes shatters your assumptions about what history is and what the world is and perhaps who you are and what's going on.
Right.
And it's a massive, massive subject. I mean, for people who are into spirituality and magic, Dee and his work are really the calculus of the spiritual world. If people getting into rituals is like, the basics of meditation and magic is like arithmetic, and then getting more into Kabbalah and Hermeticism and the more structured paths is kind of like, geometry and trigonometry. Well, Dee is calculus, and it's that complicated.
Let me jump in right there. We got to take a break, but when we come back, I want to talk about Dee's influences. We've got to go back and talk about Hermeticism and its foundation, what it is, and how that rolled into, of course, his life. So we'll do that when we come back. Our guest tonight, Jason Louv, This is Fade to Black. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. You can follow me on Twitter at JChurchRadio. Follow Jason at Jason Louv. It's Fade to Black. I'll be right back. Stay with us.
This is Fade to Black with Jimmy Church on the Game Changer Radio Network and KGRA, the Global Radio Alliance.
This is KGRA Digital Broadcasting Station, Salt Lake City, Utah, Van Buren, Arkansas.
Hello, Fadernauts. This is Jimmy Church, and I'm introducing New Pharma, a company whose products are based on science. Human function based on the endocannabinoid system, or ECS. New Pharma firmly believes in this science, and their research indicates that support of the ECS provides the beneficial effects for a healthy lifestyle. New Pharma's science includes relief capsules for pain relief, sleep capsules, which are natural support for occasional sleeplessness. Foundation is support for your ECS, and Fit capsules support your active lifestyle. Just click on the banner at jimmychurchradio.com and use the promo code F2B for a 33% discount on all of their products. Or visit newpharma.com for all of the knowledge on the science. That's GNUpharma.com. Go back, Lee Tappy.
Hello, I'm Katie, and you're listening to my main man, Jimmy Church, on jimmychurchradio.com.
Hi, this is Ray Hobbs here, repping the planet, and you're listening to my good friend, Jimmy Church, Fade to Black, on the Game Changer Network and the KGRA Digital Broadcast Station.
This is Toby Kebbell. You're listening to jimmychurchradio.com. Don't hurt me, Jimmy. I'm only little.
Hey, I'm Adrian Grenier. And this is Ari Gold. We're the Honey Brothers. Yes. We are of the Honey Brothers. Hey, I'm Adrian Grenier.
And I'm Ari Gold.
We're the Honey Brothers.
And you're listening to Jimmy Church.
The Revolution.
Ancient Life Oil. Life-changing. The real oil. CBD is truly ancient life oil from the source. This oil has no psychoactive effect and is also legal in all 50 states. When you're healthy, you're happy. The truth about this wonderful plant is that it wants to give back to mankind life, longevity, and happiness. Ancient Life Oil are golden grade, all organic, non-GMO, and infused with high-quality liquid coconut oil. It's simple. Just go to ancientlifeoil.com today. That's ancientlifeoil.com. The best, purest, organic, and non-GMO CBD in the world. Go back, Lee Tappy. The statements made regarding these products have not been evaluated by the Food and Drug Administration. These products are not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any disease. Please consult your healthcare professional about potential interactions or other possible complications before using any product.
This is Micah Hanks of the Gralien Report, and you're listening to Jimmy Church on Fade to Black, across the globe on the Game Changer Radio Network and the one and only KGRA Radio, The Planet.
Welcome back. Fade to Black. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. Our guest tonight, Jason Louv. This segment of Fade to Black is proudly brought to you by River Moon Coffee, makers of the Fade to Black blend. Just use the promo code F2B blend. Get 15% off of your order today. Click on the banners over at jimmychurchradio.com. I'm trying to keep up with everybody here at On Stellar. You guys are insane. Italy. I just got a text from Italy. Jason, let's pick up where we left off. When we talk about influences and Hermeticism is I think it's doled about sometimes a little bit too loosely, and a lot who say that may not understand it. I talked about it earlier where you start to do research. You know, I thought UFOs was enough for my life, right? And you jump into Hermeticism And that's a lifelong study right there of research and its foundations, which go back, of course, to Alexandria in Egypt. But a huge influence on all of the thinkers in the world to this day. But when we talk about Hermeticism, I want your definition.
Totally. So Hermeticism is a 2,000-year-old secret tradition in Western civilization, which is kind of the study of the hidden occult and spiritual forces behind the world. And it's the attempt from, people from time immemorial to understand what reality is. And it's the parent tradition from which we get, of course, the occult and magic, and actually also that we get science from. Science and alchemy were born out of the Hermetic tradition. So you have to imagine in context that for 1,000 years and more, 1,500 years, it was the church, right? There was the Catholic Church, and then the Protestant branches, and the Orthodox Church. And the one source of truth about what reality was the church. And it was just, this is what it is. It's receive scripture, follow the book, and follow what the church says, and that's it, and don't ask questions. Well, Hermeticism was, and of course became a cult. Hermeticism were the people who did want to ask questions, who wanted to perhaps make experiments into reality and the spiritual world to try and understand things for themselves instead of just being told what to think. And more deeply than that, Hermeticism is really trying to, it comes from the place of saying, well, if God created everything, right? If God created the universe, well, there must be intelligence behind how he or she or it, how God created this universe, right? The signature of the creator must be in the creation. And so, this is kind of funny, but the best definition of Hermeticism that I've ever heard actually comes from a Smiths song.
The Smiths, really? Okay. Yeah. All right.
There's the song Ask by the Smiths. Morrissey had the lyric, "Nature is a language can't you read?" Which, of course, he's not talking about Hermeticism, but I think that's the greatest definition of Hermeticism ever, because the Hermetic thinkers looked at nature and the human soul, and they wanted to find the patterns. What are the hidden occult patterns of reality? And if we can understand those patterns, then we'll understand the language of nature. And even more than that, we'll understand the language of how God talks. Because God doesn't necessarily talk in language. God talks through the language of everything around us, the creation that we're experiencing and living in. They wanted to understand how the machine was put together.
Where else can you go to get a healthy dose of alchemy, Hermeticism, and Morrissey drop, right? All in one show. That's what I'm talking about. Morrissey was a genius. Well, is, but genius. Genius. Right up there with John Dee. And I'm not saying that loosely at all. And I like your musical background. And that's a really cool eye-opener. I don't want to go into a music thing here, but I'm very tempted.
If only they'd been able to collaborate, it would have been Morrissey, Marr, and Dee. John Dee instead of Johnny Marr.
Yeah. No, he could have gone with John Dee. You just dropped the two E's. Right?
Totally.
Could have been Johnny D and Morrissey. So, man, I'm going to claim that. I'm going to steal that. Okay, so now this is, for me, we have the other part about this too. When we're talking about Hermeticism and, of course, Alexandria, we have the Thoth elements and stuff that goes back tens of thousands of years going backwards. Was John Dee aware of that part of it?
Yes, he absolutely was, and he studied it intensively for, for throughout his 20s and 30s, and with the Hermetic texts, they had leftover texts from Alexandria and Egypt, and it had been a textual tradition going back to the beginning of the first century. And the really exciting thing for Dee and his contemporaries was that they were able to get their hands on those texts for the first time during the Renaissance, after the sack of Constantinople in the 1400s by the Ottoman Empire. where, when Constantinople was burned, a lot of Orthodox priests fled to the Vatican and the Italian city-states, and they brought with them all those texts, not just the Hermetica, but also the texts of Plato and Aristotle. And that was the first time people in Europe had ever seen really any source of anything interesting outside of, the Bible. So it was a big deal for people.
If I could go back in time, there would be a few. I'm going to ask you where you would go right now. There would be a few places that I would need to deal with. I would, when the pyramids were being constructed, whatever that was, I would like to be there to see that. I would like to go back to Göbekli Tepe and see that get built 12,000 years ago. But Florence, right? And what was flourishing there? And to hang out and at the different, not only the secret rooms, but just the cafes and see how that information was collected and discussed. Could you just imagine? Now, for you, if you could do the same thing, what would you do?
Well, I would love to see all that. I mean, can you imagine the beautiful piazzas and all the, the Florentine art and the Sistine Chapel and all of that? It would be incredible. But not to be cheeky, but, actually, I think my honest answer is I like it now. And I think for somebody like me and for many of the listeners, and, I think that, for people like us who are interested in this stuff, now really is the best time in history to be alive. And because this material has been kept secret for thousands of years, it's been hidden for an elite, and people haven't had access to it. When you consider that even John Dee spent years just searching for one book in Europe, and now we have access to all this stuff. We can just Google PDFs of it or get it sent the same day on Amazon Prime. And we can talk about it openly and do shows like this without being afraid that someone's going to come knock on the door. And I think that that's incredible and unprecedented, and we should take as much advantage of it as we can while we still have it. So that's my hopefully not too cheeky answer, but now really is, I think, the golden age of magic in a way, more than any of these other cultures.
Now, back to John Dee. So let's go back to the scientist. Okay, so here he is. I guess he could nearly be called the number 2, right, in the British Empire, in this advisory capacity and the scientific stuff that he was doing for the Queen at the time. How much did he influence through science and experiments and demonstrations to Elizabeth at that time? How profound was it, and how much impact did he have on her?
He had a lot of influence, and he had a profound impact, but it wasn't as much as people think, actually, in the sense that, he was one of many consultants to the Queen. I mean, and he had many contemporaries. Sir Francis Walsingham, who started, what we now know as MI5 and MI6. There were other alchemists at the court, and he was perpetually kind of underpaid. He was really an underpaid government consultant for most of his life, and didn't get a whole lot of love and respect. And so it's easy to kind of romanticize his position, but he was really one of many. I'm not necessarily sure he was the number 2. I think that probably would have been William Cecil, the Secretary of State, who was not a fan of Dee. But, it's crazy. You can only imagine, Dee's crowning achievement of his scientific and his imperial career, if you want to call it that, his political career, was coming up with this idea of the British Empire and saying, at this time, England was poor. It was a developing nation. People couldn't eat. Elizabeth's administration was broke. They were afraid of Spain sending the Armada to just come down on everybody, and it could all end at any moment. And it was Dee who came up with the idea that just as the Romans had conquered the world by leveraging the technology of the road, that England could conquer the world by leveraging naval technology. So he gave them the idea of the British Empire and the scientific schematics and in order to do it. And he invented the paradoxical compass and all of this stuff. And but you have to imagine him coming to court in his early 50s and bringing this idea, and they laughed him out of court. And they thought it was an absurd idea And then he left hanging his head in shame. And then a few days later, Cecil, the Secretary of State, brought him a leg of venison as payment for his idea. This is the greatest empire the world had ever seen. The genesis, the idea with this, his payment was a leg of lamb for the British Empire. And so he left in shame and didn't get any love for it. But of course, only a few years later, they turned around and used his idea and ran with it once they realized how much wealth there was in North America. It's a tragic story.
It is. Well, it wouldn't have been that bad if it was a New Zealand leg of lamb, because. But
it's English food.
Yeah,
English
I know,
food.
Right? So that probably ticked him off. The other part of it which is an extraordinary part of this entire story, is Edward Kelly. Now, when Edward came into the picture, wait a minute. You and I understand the story. The audience doesn't. Who is Edward Kelly?
Okay. So, yeah, this is where it gets even crazier, right?
It does.
And so Dee, up to this point, that's pretty much the first 50 years of his life is academic, intellectual, government work.
Right.
And it's only after this period where he gets the idea for the British Empire that he decides to dedicate himself full time to the occult. And he's got decades of theory under his belt, but Dee has a problem. And the problem is that he can't scry. And scrying is, for those who don't know, scrying is basically staring into a piece of crystal or a glass or a dark mirror until you kind of trance out. And in that trance state, it's kind of like a dream state, a waking dream where you can, if you're good at this, it takes a while to learn. If you're good at this, you can see what appear to be other beings and get information from them. So Dee couldn't do that because he was he was like an IT guy, right? He was too compulsively rational. And so the breakthrough, and in fact, he even contemplated suicide in 1569, where he had been trying to do it. He was trying to contact the Archangel Michael, and he couldn't do it. And he thought it was because he wasn't worthy enough of a Christian, right? But his breakthrough, his quantum leap, came through when he met Edward Kelly. And so you have to imagine this guy arriving at Dee's house in Mortlake in southwestern London. And the moon, Dee writes in his diaries, turned blood red the day that Edward Kelly appeared. And Edward Kelly was half Dee's age. He was 25. He was overweight. His ears had been cut off he got caught forging coins. He was an alcoholic. A cloud of scandal and a miasma of kind of infernalism followed him, where he'd been accused of, necromancy, summoning corpses from the grave, or speaking to, trying to summon demons, which he had been doing.
Mm-hmm.
And Dee and his wife and his family were repulsed by him, but Dee very quickly realized that Kelly had the gift. He had the knack. He could do it. He was not only a good scryer, but he was giving Dee information that matched up with what Dee knew about magic that seemed to be incredibly good quality information. And so they formed a working partnership. And what that looked like on a day-to-day basis was them sitting in Dee's study around a crystal ball or a piece of crystal, and Dee doing, praying at length to exhaustion almost, or praying to Jesus and the angels to bring them wisdom and higher knowledge of reality. And then after Dee finished the prayers and kind of the technical side of opening this magical space, Kelly would approach the crystal and go into this trance state, and then he would narrate what he was seeing in his visions, and Dee would ask questions to clarify, and then be writing it down.
Let me jump in, Jason. Did Kelly's reputation at that point was already in stone, if you will, right? And was Dee aware of Kelly's past? Because how do you go from a pragmatic, black and white scientific mindset to accepting Kelly? I only envision that if Dee didn't know about his past. Did he know about his past?
It's unclear. It's very likely he did. But, Dee didn't have that great of a reputation either. I mean, Dee had been accused of sorcery even from his college days. One of the reasons being that he was always playing practical jokes and using his knowledge of optics, for instance, to create optical illusions. And he had done a play in college where he created an illusion of a flying beetle using optical glasses that terrified everyone. And he'd been accused of working. The Catholics thought he was working with the Protestant side. The Protestant side thought he was working with the Catholics.
Right.
And he himself had a cloud of scandal around him, which may have made him perhaps more sympathetic to somebody who also was on the wrong, on the outskirts of society. But certainly associating with Kelly didn't help his reputation very much either. But I think that Dee to get a sense of his character and who he was a scientist. He was totally concerned only with finding the truth and other things. And I think this is quite to his credit and really remarkable. Nothing else really mattered to him. His social position, he was desperately poor for much of his life, so he was constantly trying to get money. That mattered to him. But his social position was not as important. And what people thought of him was not as important and he took phenomenal professional risks, and certainly people at this time would have thought that he was, playing with the fate of his immortal soul doing this type of thing. So those are tremendous, scientific, if you will, risks or risks to take in the name of pure science or discovering the truth. But Dee was very, very, very sincere, perhaps to a fault, perhaps even being a bit naive about the motivation of people around him.
What about alchemy before Kelly? Was Dee exposed to the alchemist of the time?
Absolutely. So here's the deal with alchemy, right? What's the promise of alchemy? It's that you can turn base metals into gold, that you can take lead and turn it into gold through some secret chemical process. You can imagine this idea would be quite interesting to people at the time. And so what we saw during the Elizabethan era and before that and afterwards and the Renaissance was everybody was trying to figure out alchemy. It was really the arms race, the financial arms race of its day, because whoever figured that out first would have an economic edge over all the other competing countries. So Elizabeth was, constantly was fascinated by alchemy. The Elizabethan court kept getting taken by fraudulent alchemists who claimed that they could do it, but didn't produce results, but sucked down a lot of money in the process from the court. Dee was fascinated with alchemy, but Dee was fascinated with real alchemy. And real alchemy is using those metaphors and applying them to the human soul.
Right.
How can we take base lead, meaning your standard unawakened human being who feels powerless and adrift in the world, and by applying occult processes, meaning, meditation and ritual and prayer and all the techniques of magic, turn them into an enlightened sage. That's what Dee thought alchemy was. And he really spent a lot of time trying to interest not just Elizabeth, but all the monarchs of Europe in this idea. And they weren't very interested in spiritual enlightenment. They just wanted to know if he could produce gold. But, Dee was above that, so.
There's another part of alchemy that scares me. And that's the part that everybody else, that we know absolutely nothing about. That's the part of alchemy that freaks me out. I was sitting with a great researcher, and we were in a restaurant here in Los Angeles at night, and there's it's a couple hundred people there at a hotel. And he turns to me, he whispers to me, and he goes, "Hey, Jimmy, right now there is somebody 500 years old in this restaurant." Right, and you just think about that for a second.
Was it George Burns?
Yeah, it was George actually, and so, but that's the part of alchemy. You're right about that. Turning lead into gold, and that's on the surface, and that's the popular urban legend about alchemy, and that's what they pursued. There's no doubt about that. It's other part.
Hold on, did you go talk to this person?
Oh man, of course.
What was the deal?
I'll have this conversation with you off of the air.
This is okay.
Yeah. Oh, trust
I'm sure
me.
everyone listening to this is like, come on.
I told part of this story before on the air, But I'll say this, Rita and I, so we're sitting at this table and there's a few people there that right? Okay, it's not that big. So we're sitting and he, starts to talk and Rita and I lean in and he goes, okay. I said, look, man, give me the secret stuff. And he goes, all right, I'll share something with you. And he tells us this story of one of the ceremonies, right, in alchemy. And 10 minutes later, I felt like it was so stunning to me. It felt like an ice pick in the forehead. I sat there stunned. I had never heard the most extreme Kubrick scene of any movie. Had nothing in comparison to what was going through my head at that moment. It was really cool. It was discussed for days after that. So I'll tell you some of it off of the air.
We'll do the secret handshakes first.
Yes.
Sounds good.
And that's the part of alchemy, because there, when you get into Falconelli and some of the modern sides of alchemy, I truly believe that right now on this planet they have a place where they get together and it's a secret and it's probably some mansion or castle in Romania. I don't know, as a fact, but where that we absolutely know nothing about, and it's meant to be that way. And that's it.
Well,
and that's it.
I'll tell you, man. Like, I spent a lot of time in India. Like, they know all that stuff there, and they'll tell you. I went up into the Himalayas, at 13,000 feet up, and they'll tell you stories about people that have been. Well, I probably shouldn't say too much stuff on the air, but they know all that stuff. The secrets of Mercury and alchemy, and it may have come from India originally. There's unbroken lines of research over there.
Yeah, that goes back. See, the thing is about India, the reason why nothing looks old there, like Giza, right? They've been building and rebuilding and painting and rebuilding those sacred sites and temples unbroken for thousands and thousands of years, and they're currently occupied. Right?
Oh, yeah.
And so that's what's really cool. I want to ask you really quick before the break. You said that Hermetica, we've got 3 minutes. You said that Hermetica took humanity out of the Dark Ages. Can you expand on that?
Well, in the sense that what Hermeticism did was create a secret underground tradition of people who were investigating and making experiments into the nature of reality outside of church domination. And what emerged from that were secret societies like Rosicrucianism and Freemasonry, which formed kind of covert associations of free thinkers. And without that network, without, on one hand, the ability to associate with other free thinkers in secret, and on the other hand, to try to be associating with those people to try to come up with a way to not just explore reality, but perhaps even change it and manipulate it. Well, that's how science happened. And science, of course, dragged Europe out of the Dark Ages. And it probably wouldn't have happened in England without John Dee, in the sense that John Dee was the great scientific educator of England. He brought all the scientific knowledge from the continent to England. He founded the biggest library of the time, 5 times the size of Cambridge and Oxford. He tirelessly taught mathematics and optics to the new generation, the generation that would go on to found modern science. And but it's all one continuum, and that's the mind-blowing thing. That's the thing that people don't realize. This idea of Hermeticism and magic. Can we understand reality and then manipulate it through the right procedures? That became science. They're not two different things. It's a continuum of inquiry. And it was, of course, I think science that really did turn the lights on in Western civilization. Now, unfortunately, as time went on, spirituality in the realm of what we might call the soul or consciousness, well, that got separated out and kind of thrown out with the bathwater. And now we have kind of the stepped down field of psychology, which, is great, but is not, at least in my opinion, nowhere near as deep or satisfying as the Hermetic and occult tradition in terms of understanding what human beings are and why we're here.
Our guest tonight, Jason Louv. We're talking about his new book, and it is amazing. Holding it up for the camera. John Dee and the Empire of Angels. More with Jason right after this short break. Stay with us.
Way out here, we listen to Jimmy Church.
You're listening to Fade to Black.
Always on the edge of the hottest alternative talk. Jimmy Church with Fade to Black. KGRARadio.com.
¿Qué tal, mis amigos? Yo soy Mario Carson, el tiburón, y los invito para que escuchen a mi buen amigo Jimmy Church Radio. ¡Claro que sí!
Hurricanes, earthquakes, wildfires. This year we've experienced more than our fair share. This is Jimmy Church of Fade to Black, and last month I decided to make sure my family does not have to worry about food should we get caught in a real emergency situation. Introducing Numana, a healthy, storable product that tastes so good that you'll want to eat it every day instead of just during those times of duress. All Numana products have a 25-year shelf life, are MSG and GMO-free, no preservatives, and are made in America. With the Numana pack in your home, you'll be able to sleep at night knowing that you've protected your family. Not only have I tasted and tested, I own it. Now you can too. Just click on the Numana banner on JimmyChurchRadio.com and use the promo code Jimmy when you order. In addition to a discount, we'll send you an autographed Fade to Black t-shirt. Seriously. Go Beckley Tappy.
Do you worry a lot? Whether you're a college student, busy professional, parent, or grandparent, ongoing stress and elevated levels of the stress hormone cortisol can rob your memory, your health, and your future. Now you can combat the effects of stress and anxiety while improving your memory and recall at the same time with the dietary supplement Calm and Clever. Studies show that the ingredients in Calm and Clever reduce cortisol by as much as 30% in 1 to 2 weeks. Call 1-800-758-8746 or calmandclever.com.
You listen to us, and we listen to you. And so does the CIA. KGRARadio.com.
Hi, folks. CBD is the home run hitter for health right now. Why, you ask? Because of what it does for the body. Unfortunately, I can't tell you all about the benefit. You know, there's reasons. Do your due diligence and log on to ancientlifeoil.com. That's ancientlifeoil.com. Ancient Life Oil uses organic ingredients and is blended in coconut oil for some of the best benefits. Legal in 50 states and non-psychoactive. Log on to ancientlifeoil.com. That's ancientlifeoil.com.
You are listening to Fade to Black with Jimmy Church on the Game Changer Network.
Oi, oi, I'm Reese Evans. You're listening to Jimmy Church. This is Revolution. The revolution will not be televised. The revolution is on radio. Ciao.
Welcome back, Fade to Black. Our guest tonight, Jason Louv, and this segment of Fade to Black is proudly brought to you by New Pharma, GNU Pharma. Just go to JimmyChurchRadio.com, click on the banner. Promo code is F2B, F the number 2B. You will get 33% off of your New Pharma order. Now, Jason, let's jump ahead. The book is an amazing read for everybody, and it's very comprehensive. It's very detailed, and your writing style, by the way. Oh, I wanted to ask you. about your writing style before we get back to the conversation. Where'd you learn to write? Where did you go to school?
Well, I mean, I started writing when I was, 4 or 5 years old and haven't stopped since. So, I went to school at I studied journalism, English and journalism at UC Santa Cruz, right, and also at King's College in London.
It shows. It shows. The writing style is, man, it's like, I feel almost intimidated, but the writing style is very fluid, and I like the comprehensive, deep, black and white style, and that's exactly what this book is. So I feel like it was written for me. It's just really well done.
Thank you.
Now, the period. Let's jump ahead. Let's get off of Edward and the crystal ball for a second. I want to jump ahead from that. Oh, I wanted to ask you, do you have a scrying mirror?
Well, I've used all kinds of things for scrying. I mean, you can use crystals. You can use the easiest thing is just put some black coffee in a cup and use that. But a really great thing you can do, another thing you can do, is go to Goodwill or something and buy a picture frame for $5, just like a discarded picture.
Right.
Take the glass out and spray black reflective spray paint on the back. Let it dry, and then put it back in the frame, and you've got yourself a scrying mirror.
But you didn't answer the question.
Yes.
Do you have a scrying mirror?
Scrying crystal.
Yeah. Now, what about a giant crystal skull, like I'm holding up to the cameras?
Oh. Is that are they on eBay? Anyone got a link?
Not this one. Not the one I'm holding up here. I'll show it to you one day.
Nice.
Now back to scrying mirrors. I was offered one a couple of years ago from a friend, and for one reason or another, it didn't happen. But the idea on its use kind of freaked me out a little bit, in that I don't know if I could control it. Right? That's my thing. I don't know if I could control it, because once I would get involved with it, I think that it would be something that would be beyond me.
Well, I think that's a valid perception, and honestly, that's why magic exists. All of the rigmarole of ceremonial magic and hermeticism and the precise nature of the rituals, that stuff exists to control it. It's magic is kind of like a programming language for dialing up just the parts of the spiritual world you want to talk to. So the mistake that most people make is they approach Ouija boards or scrying or channeling or whatever it is, and they go in cold, no protection, and they'll just wait for anything to come through, and that's why they often get misleading or ineffective or even malevolent, perhaps in really rare but bad cases. Information or activity, and that's where all this horror movie stuff comes from. But in the real world, it's not nearly that dramatic. But magic is all about, it's almost like a programming language for that stuff. The same goes for psychedelics. People go straight into this stuff without knowing what they're doing, and magic provides the science of interacting with those things in a logical, straightforward, and clean and clearer way.
I'll tell you something funny. This crystal skull here, it's ginormous, right? Here it is. And we were doing, which I'd never done before, the uninitiated, right? And so it was a crystal skull ceremony. And so I sit down with some friends, and this skull was sitting in front of me. And I sit down, being the doofus that I am. Hey, what are you guys doing? Can I come hang out? Right? So I sit down, and we're going through the ceremony. And this skull, as I pick it up and I'm holding it in my hand, and as sure as I'm sitting here talking to you, this is what happened. The skull goes, "My name is Jose." Right in my head, right? Like, whoa. Yeah. And I was like, what? And I just said to everybody, I go, dude, the skull just said his name was Jose. And that's it. And Jose was gifted to me, and he's been mine ever since. And he sits in here with me in the bunker.
Has he told you anything else?
That's personal. Okay. Well, I'll tell you what. I've told this story many times, but this is what happened. The audience is going, okay, here we go. But this is what happened. So that night, after he names himself, right? Rita and I go into our hotel room, and we sit down. It's about midnight or so, 1 a.m, midnight, and we had a bunch of food. We're eating in bed, and we had chicken wings, and we had hotel food that we had delivered, right? Whatever, the late night menu. But next to me, on the nightstand to my left, I have two big bottles of Dr. Pepper. And I couldn't order anything healthy off of the late night menu, right? So I ordered, Dr. Pepper, whatever. And so the bottles are sitting on my nightstand to my left. And Rita and I, so we bring the crystal skull in bed, and he's sitting there. And I turn to Rita, and I go, so how are the chicken wings? And she's literally biting into a chicken wing. And then all of a sudden, poof. I'm like, what was that? And I look to my left, and one of the Dr. Pepper bottles is gone. And I looked over on the side of there it is. It's on the floor. And I pick it up, and I thought, wow, that's weird. It slid off. How could it slide off? What? Right? And it's full. And I put it back on the nightstand. And I turned to Rita, and I said, so how are those chicken wings? Poof. And I went, no. And I turned, and the Dr. Pepper's gone again. And now I'm talking about it's a foot from the edge, by the way. It's not like on the edge, I pick it up, and I said, that was weird. And I put it back on the nightstand. Now I back it up, and now it's in the center of the nightstand. And I turned to Rita, and I said, so how about those chicken wings? And I was like, no way. And Rita and I didn't even want to turn around. I didn't. And I said, if that Dr. Pepper is on the floor, and I turned around and looked, and it was gone. And I leaned over on the bed, and I picked it up, and I put it back on the nightstand. I took the crystal skull, and I moved it to the other side of the room and put it on the table. I said, man, Jose, that's not cool, man. And I put him on the dresser and let him sit, and the Dr. Pepper didn't fall for the rest of the night. Oh, no, I take that back. Rita, in the morning, it was on the floor, right? I'll have to have her text in. I think it was on the floor in the morning, but it was weird, and it was just like a minute apart. It wouldn't, and I thank goodness I didn't see it do it. That would have put me over the edge. So yeah, there's a little juice here in Jose.
Well, this has now become inadvertently become the greatest commercial for Dr. Pepper ever, because now we know what spirits want. It's specifically Dr. Pepper.
You know what? So the next day I'm speaking, and I share this story. There was like 500 people in front of me. And I tell the story to everybody. Rita said we left it on the floor the third time. That's what, right? That's right. She's right. I didn't choose to move it back up to the nightstand. That's what it was. Yeah, the third time it stayed on the floor. So the next day I tell the story to a huge room full of people. After I left the stage, I had people coming up to me going, it was Jose telling you not to drink Dr. Pepper.
Well,
I think there's something
you
to
never
that.
know. Maybe he wanted you to pour him out like a little glass of Dr. Pepper. I challenge you to pour some Dr. Pepper out in a glass and offer it to Jose, and maybe put some incense or something, and just see what happens.
I'll do it.
They like that. It gets. I mean, imagine not having a body. People get cold and hungry out there in the spirit world.
Yes,
they just want a little, little Dr. Pepper.
Yeah, a little glucose fix, a little fructose, a little corn syrup.
Those are the secrets of the occult right there, from Dr. Dee to Dr. Pepper.
Yeah, see, it'll keep you alive forever. That's the answer to alchemy. Corn syrup. Live forever. Okay, so back to John Dee. So that period after Edward, John Dee is no longer with us, right? That period,
or is he?
Right. How long did his work with the communication with the angels and all of his notes and stuff, did that immediately go into those different occult societies and circles, or was it later picked up?
It actually did. I mean, the Rosicrucians the Rosicrucian manifestos began circulating, I think, not more than 5 years after Dee's death. And the Rosicrucian manifestos were a series of 3 documents that started to appear in the European underground in the early 1600s that said, there's this secret society of invisibles out there who are investigating the secrets of nature and the occult, and all you have to do to join us is take some dramatic public action for free science, for free thinking and reason, and claim it for the Rosicrucians, not yourself. And so by doing that, of course, now people started doing this all over Europe and creating, like a magic trick, creating the Rosicrucians out of nothing. Because even if it was an urban legend, even if it didn't exist in a real, at that point, didn't exist, it existed now when people started trying to contact the Rosicrucians and becoming the Rosicrucians in the process. And by the way, some of the people who did this were Rene Descartes, I believe Isaac Newton later on, Francis Bacon, definitely. Many of the early scientists. But those Rosicrucian manifestos included a lot of Dee's ideas. They included his hieroglyphic monad symbol. They included, when Francis Bacon started to roll with that and wrote a book called The New Atlantis, where he said that the New World should be colonized as a Rosicrucian country full of free thinkers who can pursue religious liberty away from the church, which, by the way, that myth became real in the founding of America by the Masonic founding fathers. Freemasonry also directly connected to Rosicrucianism at this time. This was all straight out of Dee's work and his thinking and his spiritual ideas and the stuff that came out of the angelic sessions and his ideas about empire all started to circulate right away, and having a huge impact, huge.
The movement of John Dee through these circles, I will say, I don't like to say occult because he influenced others too as well, but was the movement quick? I mean, was it accepted right away?
It was quick for its time period. There was, of course, a lot of pushback also. But what you have to the way that I came to look at it, what you have to think of here is it's kind of 2 competing gangs, or 2 competing clusters of gangs who are competing for what reality is going to become at this time. So on one side, you have kind of the occult thinkers, the free thinkers, the early scientists, the Freemasons, the Rosicrucians, and on the other side, you have the Jesuits and the Franciscans and the other Catholic and holy orders who are doing everything that they can to stamp out this new rebellion, this new movement towards free thinking, doing that either physically, brutally, or through propaganda by, for instance, spreading the rumor that Rosicrucians are all Satanists and engaged in horrible rites and sacrifice and all this stuff to scare people away from these new ideas. And what was an occult war at that time, a gang war between 2 competing, tribes of intellectuals, basically, that culminated in the 30 Years' War, and it's just brutal, just a horrible war that swept throughout Europe. And continued all the way up to the 20th century. I mean, the Catholics and the Protestants still fighting brutally in places like Northern Ireland, sadly. But that's kind of what the deal was at the time. But yeah, those ideas spread very quickly for their time period. It was before the internet, but they had the printing press, and they were able to publish pamphlets and pass them covertly and under the cover of shadows from hand to hand, of eager seeker to eager seeker.
Now, and the reason why I bring that up is was there pushback, and you always have opposition no matter what, and you have people that are going to challenge the ideas for their own reasons, whether it's ego or maybe they have something valid. But was there pushback, or was he just given a hall pass? You know what I mean? That it was just an open door, and they brought him in.
Oh boy, was there ever pushback?
Right.
When we're talking about, again, when Dee and Kelly were in Prague, they went from England to Europe to try and spread those ideas directly in Central Europe. The Jesuits tried to kill them. They tried to bring them to the Vatican to be tortured and killed. They tried to run off with all of their manuscripts, all their writing from the angelic sessions. And in fact, there's a incredible story from this time period where Dee and Kelly are running. This is unbelievable. Dee and Kelly are running from the Jesuit or the Papal Nuncio, and the angels appear to them and they say, "Burn all of your spirit diaries." They have 25 volumes of everything the angels had been saying to them over the last 6 or 7 years. They're commanded to burn them. They burn them in the fireplace. And it's like God telling them what to do in their minds, so they do it. Right. They burn all of this stuff so that it can't be taken by the Jesuits. And then a couple months later, Kelly is walking in a field and he sees an apparition where there's a guy moving with his feet hovering just like a foot off the ground, and hovers over to a tree and then commands Kelly to go back up to the fireplace where the books were burned. And which he does with Dee. Dee and Kelly both go up there, and then they see a doorway of light open up in the back of the fireplace, and a spectral hand, this is what they say at least, a spectral hand reaches out of the doorway of light and starts handing them back the books one at a time until they have all of them back. And this is now when they're out of danger of being killed. And they basically said, we did this so that you wouldn't be killed by the Jesuits. And all of those books still exist. So, it's a pretty hair-raising story. It's an incredible story.
It's an incredible story. And and when I read that in the book, there was a thought that went through my head about, the last years of Dee's life were tragic. He lost his mind. And so now what do I do with this kind of information, this memory? Could it be something else here that is, what do I want to say, that is being preserved for us today, but it couldn't have been something else? I don't want to speak critically of Dee, but you know where I'm going with this.
Well, Dee did not lose his mind. He had a lot of tragedies in his life. In the later part of his life, after all this ended, he came back to England and he was kind of put out to pasture in Manchester as an academic. And the real tragedy of this time is that the plague hit Manchester, and he lost his wife and several of his children to the plague. And he had financial struggles, and but he was quite sharp by the end. He was doing very well. He continued to do scrying to the end of his life. He certainly did not lose his mind, and he probably rose as high as he could have in society, all considered, given anyone of his class and background. He rose as high as he could have given his class and background. So he didn't do that bad, and he certainly did face tragedies. But look, it was like the early 1600s, the late 1500s. Like, life sucked then. It's like nobody got off easy.
Well, that's interesting that you put it that way, because and you've read the same things that I have read. There are. Some reports were that what are the words that I want to use? When I say insane, it could be a lot of different things. So you're saying that he never lost his faculties?
No,
schizophrenia, nothing like that?
Nothing like that. He did not have anything like Alzheimer's or dementia, even like that. He was sharp as a tack to the end. He was working as a professor and an academic. He was never that financially well off, but no, there was nothing of that sort. Kelly's a different issue. Kelly probably did have mental health issues along with alcoholism and a lot of other stuff. And Kelly met a much more untimely end in that after Dee and Kelly's sessions in the late 1580s, when they were in Central Europe, Kelly was given an offer by the Holy Roman Emperor to come and do alchemy for him and make gold. And so he threw Dee under the bus and said, well, I can do it myself. I don't need John Dee. I don't need my mentor. I've learned everything I can from him. And he went off with Rudolph to make his fortune. But of course, Rudolph, the Holy Roman Emperor, decided just to throw him in prison and say, well, do it for free now because now you're my prisoner. And Kelly died shortly thereafter. It's possible he may have died jumping out of a window trying to escape prison and may have broken his legs and died shortly thereafter. So, but I wouldn't say that Kelly quite lost his mind either, although he definitely was on the ropes during the sessions.
You know what's interesting about that period as we head into the break, and I've thought about this so much over the years. Rudolph, the rumors are all over Europe about Rudolph at that time, right? And he's got money, he's spending it, he's interested in all of this secret stuff. And so in that element where con men is the way that I want to use this term, they came out from everywhere. And once you start to spread that out on the streets, everybody was heading to Rudolph at that time, weren't they?
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's just like now, any time where there's like a gold rush or an opportunity for people to make money, that's going to happen. And, I think it's very similar to today, for instance, blockchain and cryptocurrency, perhaps, where there's this, radical new technology has come out and it's fascinating and revolutionary, but there's a lot of hucksters in the works also,
right,
in the mix. It's the same with alchemy. I mean, anyone could. And because alchemy, nobody really understood it, similar to some technology things now, anyone could kind of come out of the woodwork and say, oh, yeah, I can make gold for you, no problem. Just give me, $10 million to set up a laboratory. And then they vanish a week later, never to be heard from again. There was a lot of that.
The Rudolph gold rush. I never thought of it that way, but that's exactly how it was going down. And if you were really good, all you did was delay. I need a couple of more months. I need a couple of more months. I need a couple of more months, and I'm close. Well, it's like the perfect thing for that period and for the big con. And Rudolph he got taken to the ringer. Ooh, man, taken through it. Let's take a break right here. It's a good spot to do it because when we come back, Jason. Let's go to where we are today and the modern era of all of this. We've got to discuss Crowley and Anton LaVey and the maybe even a little Blavatsky. Are you down for that?
Totally.
Let's do it. This is Fade to Black. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. Our guest tonight, Jason Louv, and we're talking about his new book, and the book is amazing. I'm holding it up for the camera. John Dee and the Empire of Angels. Check it out. Look how thick that is. It's a good book. I'll be right back. Jason, I judge my books by the inch, just to let you know. We'll be right back.
Hi, everybody. This is Rob Halford, the Metal God, on JimmyChurchRadio.com.
This is KGRA Digital Broadcasting Station. Salt Lake City, Utah. Van Buren, Arkansas.
Okay, nurse, let's get this man to the ER stat.
Right away, doctor.
We see this every day. Heart attack or angina pain due to blocked and clogged arteries. Chelation can remove obstructions or blockages from arteries and help avoid painful and expensive surgery. Now there's Angioprim. It's a liquid oral chelation product that you take with juice. You start to feel the results fast. Angioprim increases blood flow all over the body, and that means more energy and strength to take on the day with less aches and pains. 60 years of research has gone into chelation. And Angioprim is the result, a safe and easy way to unblock your veins and arteries from buildup that slow circulation.
Paging Dr. Jones. Please report to the emergency room right away.
Log on now for a special radio offer from Angioprim. That's angioprim.com/radio. ANGIOPRIM. Angioprim.com/radio or call 877-882-7221. That's 877-882-7221.
So, you love talk radio? Then you'll love TalkStreamLive.com. TalkStream Live is always on, 24/7, with the best streaming talk shows. Find your favorite talkers and discover some new ones. It's free, readily available online or on the smartphone or tablet. Finding your favorite talk shows all in one place has gotten a whole lot easier. Just go to TalkStreamLive.com. Be sure to download the free apps from Google Play or the iTunes App Store.
Your contact for current news and trending topics. KGRAradio.com.
Hello, Fadernauts. This is Jimmy Church, and I'm introducing New Pharma, a company whose products are based on science. Human function based on the endocannabinoid system, or ECS. New Pharma firmly believes in this science, and their research indicates that support of the ECS provides the beneficial effects for a healthy lifestyle. New Pharma's science includes relief capsules for pain relief, sleep capsules, which are natural support for occasional sleeplessness. Foundation is support for your ECS, and Fit capsules support your active lifestyle. Just click on the banner at jimmychurchradio.com and use the promo code F2B for a 33% discount on all of their products. Or visit newpharma.com for all of the knowledge on the science. That's GNUpharma.com. Go Beckley Tappy. Did you know that when you're on the road with limited data or Wi-Fi available, you can still listen to every minute of Fade to Black by just calling 605-562-4482. No smartphone, app, or internet needed. It saves your data plan and no extra cost if you have unlimited minutes. Just call 605-562-4482. You can listen to me, Jimmy Church, on any phone, anytime, anywhere. Go Beckley Tappy.
You want to know a secret? I love ponies. I really love ponies. I'm serious. I couldn't stay sane without ponies to brush.
Why Fade to Black? Because you never got that pony, damn it.
This is Fade to Black with Jimmy Church on the Game Changer Radio Network and KGRA, the Global Radio Alliance.
Welcome back, Fade to Black. I am your host, Jimmy Church. Our guest tonight, Jason Louv, and this segment of Fade to Black is proudly brought to you by New Manna. Emergency food storage for you and your family. Just use the promo code Jimmy. Every single order over $100 gets you an autographed Fade to Black T-shirt. I'll get you a Jason Louv autographed T-shirt, and I'll pop that in the mail. Do you have T-shirts?
I should.
Yeah.
I should get some. I should do some all kinds of occult symbols and fun stuff.
I just forced you into it right there. This is what's crazy. Out of the entire John Dee story, and it is as incredible as anything out there, especially for people that love to research like I do, is this. At the beginning of the show tonight, one of the first tweets that came in said, John Dee, the foundation of the NSA, right? And that was one of the first tweets, and somebody wrote that. And it's true. And one of the quotes, the famous, our man D quote that came out of the NSA, we'll talk about that in a second. But I'm looking at right now, I'm at nsa.gov, right? One of the creepiest websites in the world. nsa.gov, and they have files and assets on John Dee, and you can go and from the NSA on their own website. How crazy is that?
Well, yeah, I mean, D was right there again. The original 007. You know, how could they not love him? He was was responsible for creating with Sir Francis Walsingham what became MI5 and MI6. So the British intelligence services, and perhaps we might argue GCHQ, which is the British equivalent of the NSA. But absolutely, the NSA and the CIA both studied him at length, and I quote all that research in the book because it's publicly available. Yeah, you know, they were fascinated with him because he's just like them. You know, he was a spook, he was a government contractor, you know, and so they're looking to him, you know, as a kindred spirit.
This document on NSA.gov, which is a really fun read. It's pretty amazing. But there's this one line here, and I believe it's in the book too as well. I could be wrong. You can correct me. But the last sentence in one of these paragraphs, it was talking about D. He was all by himself a Rand corporation for the Tudor government of Elizabeth, end quote. That is about as heavy as it gets.
Isn't that crazy? Yeah, I mean, that's what the conclusion the NSA came to him when they were researching him in the 1960s.
1967, I think this document came out. Yeah, and it was published, approved for release. How would you like to have this? A document by Jason Louv on the NSA website that says approved for release by the NSA on 11/29/2011.
One can only wonder what that would consist of.
Transparency case number 63852. By the way,
all my internet browser histories.
Oh man, absolutely nuts. All right, let's go back. Theosophical Society, Blavatsky. And what was going on in the late 1800s at the turn of the century. It seemed like there were a lot of these societies that were forming based on a lot of ancient, when I say ancient, you know, going back through ancient history and alchemy and different materials. But John Dee propped up a lot of these societies.
Yeah, well, the Victorians were obsessed with the occult. You know, they were fascinated both in, you know, England and in America. They were fascinated by spiritualism, by, theosophy, Blavatsky. They were fascinated with Egyptology. And by the way, one of the craziest things about this time period is ancient Egypt was not even unearthed until the Victorian period. So people were just being exposed to Egypt for the first time. Egypt is kind of a modern creation in a way, what we know about it. And also Sumeria at this time was just dug up out of the desert, and nobody even knew that culture even existed, like Göbekli Tepe or something like that. You know, it was they had hints that it might have existed in the Bible, but until they unearthed it, nobody even knew that it was there. So all this stuff is being dug up at this time, and people are obsessed with the spirit world. You know, people were very goth at this time. And of course, but in that craze for spirituality, which, you know, I might argue spiritual crazes happen when there are crisis points in civilizations, when people are uncertain about the future. So it's no surprise that they turn to other sources for comfort or certainty. And for instance, when the wall came down and the Soviet Union fell, that whole generation of kids that grew up in the former USSR were all fascinated with psychic phenomena and the occult, and some of the most like turned on and awake and spiritual people I've met in my entire life come from the Eastern Bloc countries or grew up in that environment. And so I don't think it's any surprise now, where America is and the West are in such turmoil, that people are interested in these things once again. And so at this time, you know, the British Empire was kind of coming to an end. The empire that Dee had founded was now coming to an end, and people were becoming immersed in spiritualism and the occult to get some more certainty in their lives. And but yeah, so the most interesting part of this entire time, in my opinion, was an occult society called the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn, which included among its members the poet W.B. Yeats, the famous actress Florence Farr, Bram Stoker, the author of Dracula, Aleister Crowley, the infamous magician, a couple of writers, horror writers named Algernon Blackwood and Arthur Machen, and also Evans Wentz, I'm getting my mind's blanking.
That's okay.
The original translator of the Egyptian Book of the Dead. Oh, E.A. Wallace Budge. There we go. And so the primary Egyptologist of his day. And so it was all the top occult thinkers of the time, and it was the founders were named William Woodman, William Wynne Westcott, and MacGregor Mathers, all of whom were esoteric Freemasons who decided they wanted to push it even further. And in doing that, they claimed that they had met a mysterious, immortal, perhaps Rosicrucian a Rosicrucian brotherhood in Europe that gave them documents that contain these rituals, magic rituals that formed an authority to form this occult society, this branch of the true Rosicrucians, which again Dee is responsible for creating way back when. And they put together this beautiful system where they took all of the occult knowledge available at that time, which they kind of unearthed in the British Library, MacGregor Mathers did. So they took Kabbalah, Tarot, Egyptology, Geomancy, and Dee's Enochian magic and fit it all together in this one intricate, beautiful system, synthesizing all of the occult knowledge that was available at the day during that time. But the core of it was Enochian. It was Dee's system. That was the dynamo, the engine that ran the whole thing. And that's what the whole thing was meant to prepare its initiates to deal with, which is Enochian magic, which is the system that Dee and Kelly delivered.
Right. And I don't know how the two of us managed to blow past one of the most amazing parts of the scrying that they were doing, Kelly and Dee, which was Enochian language and the translation of it. We danced right past that. So let's spend a couple of minutes on that. The language that they were given.
Yeah. So of course, to take it back to Dee and Kelly, they spent 7 years talking to angels. And by the way, when we talk about angels, most people think about, Hallmark cards, rosy-cheeked cherubs, bringing you tidings of good fortune. Well, the angels that Dee and Kelly were interacting with were a whole other kettle of fish. They were something like you would see in Clive Barker paintings or Hieronymus Bosch or, like the most surreal and visionary art. And the angels they write about are like giants with heads of suns, and angels with wings upon wings coming out of their heads and multiple pupils in each eye. And at one point, they actually meet God, and God is not a man with a white beard up in the clouds. No, when they saw God, they report seeing a giant whale covered with eyes from head to toe.
Can I hold the William Blake painting up for the camera? Because that's exactly what we're talking about.
It was very Blake. It was transhuman.
Let's see if I can hold this. Yeah, there you go. I'm holding this up to the camera. That painting stopped me in my tracks. That was, and it's in color. Yeah. That's from the book. Yeah, and so. This translation happens, and I believe it was the first and only translation of it.
Right, and so in their talks with these angels and these supernatural beings, they were given what is now known as Enochian magic, which is an elaborate occult system meant for, in theory, anybody could take it and use it to make contact with the angels directly. Without having to go through a lot of the preliminaries that Dee and Kelly did.
Right.
And part of that was the angelic language, or what is sometimes called Enochian, which purported at least, was the language spoken by humanity before the fall from Eden, before the fall of the Tower of Babel, the language that is spoken by angels directly, and a language that perhaps could change reality itself if you spoke it, and certainly will change your consciousness. And that became this delivered occult system, which is quite unique in Western history, in the sense that it's not, well, if you believe that they were really speaking to angels, then it is not an occult system that was pieced together by human beings, which is, certainly the Gomorrah tradition or some of the later Hermetic stuff is all assembled in a synthetic way by human beings on the ground. Well, no, this was delivered top down.
Now, what about when we talk about Rosicrucians today? Is that a watered down version of Dee, or is it still what was? It's still traditional? Is it accurate?
Well, it's kind of two different things, but I'll certainly argue, and I argue in this book, that Enochian has been the core of all of these things, whether it's Rosicrucianism or Masonry or the Golden Dawn, and it's been the center, the main event of Western esotericism for the last 500 years.
So with this, going back to the turn of the century and the Golden Dawn and Blavatsky and others, the influence of Dee at that time, I really want to be clear on this. Was it the version of Dee when Dee was alive, or were things lost in translation?
A lot was lost in translation. So, first of all, we have to realize that Dee and Kelly's diaries were buried in a field after Dee's death. And they weren't dug up till about 10 years later. They were found by a servant who found them and then was burning parts of the diaries as fire kindling, which, by the way, is the same thing that happened with the Dead Sea Scrolls when those were discovered. A lot of them were used as kindling before somebody figured out what was happening, which is just tragic, right? So a lot of the diaries are missing. But by the time we get to the Golden Dawn, the only part of Enochian that survives in the Golden Dawn is the watchtowers, which is one tiny fragment of the entire system. Mathers found that because he had access to a book called A True and Faithful Relation by Merrick Casaubon, who printed part of the diary, but not nearly all of them. And he only printed the part of the diaries that dealt with that part of the system. And so Mathers took that and he put it into the Golden Dawn. And then because he thought it was incomplete, he decided to fill in the gaps with other systems like Tarot and Kabbalah and Egyptology. And what he created is quite beautiful in its own way, but it's not the original system.
Now, what about Crowley and his quest to perform and complete a couple of these ceremonies? Were those Enochian?
They were, and in fact, in a way, Crowley is the member of the Golden Dawn to take Enochian the most seriously, and do the most, at least that we know of, do the most original research. So with Crowley, what Crowley did in the early 1900s is, with his student and male lover Victor Neuberg, spent an entire month crossing the desert in Algeria, northern Africa, and every day they would walk through the deserts, through the wasteland, and Crowley would be prostrating himself over and over again, saying Muslim mantras, Islamic mantras to God, prostrating himself over 1,000 times a day, so that he would he would completely exhaust his body. And of course, they were in a state of total sensory deprivation because they were in the desert,
right?
And then probably were using something like peyote or something like that, but I don't know. And then every night they would call one of the Aethers, which is the part of the Enochian system that's meant to, I would say, heighten the spiritual condition of people doing it. It's kind of the main part of Enochian. And there's 30 Aethers, and as each one is opened, it causes an internal, psychedelic experience or visionary experience. And he wrote all of that down. And his experiences, his writing, by the way, And Crowley's a real mixed bag. He was not a good man or a nice man, but he certainly did a lot of magic, and he left behind a lot of records. And in my opinion, his work with Enochian is the most profound, certainly writing of his career, and the most fascinating to look at. And you can really, while there's a lot of Crowley's personality bleeds into it, it's hard to read that stuff and say that he wasn't in contact with something beyond him. Well, whatever you think of Crowley himself.
Right. And he says, Crowley directly, I believe this is accurate, that he finally completed this ceremony and had no desire to do it again.
Yeah.
That's right. And what do you I can only imagine what went down. But what do you think happened to him? Who do you think he communicated with?
Well, he wrote all of his sessions down in a book called The Vision and the Voice, which, by the way, the first 2/3 of this book, only the first 2/3 of this book are about Dee. The last third is about Freemasonry, Rosicrucianism, the Golden Dawn, and then a lot on Crowley, and then Crowley's student Jack Parsons, who was one of the people who created the U.S. space program and was also doing this stuff. But Crowley left a very, very detailed record of his visions, which really kind of they're really, it's The Vision and the Voice, in my opinion, is one of the great documents of world visionary literature, without question. And what he saw in these visions was a fulfillment of all world religions, where they pieced together all of the world's spiritual traditions and then also annihilated them by showing deeper and deeper layers of truth and annihilating the symbols of religion as they went. But in Crowley's mind, what he was seeing in the Enochian Aethers was the incoming of the new age, the age of Aquarius, if you want to call it, or the Aeon of Horus, as he called it. He believed that he was seeing the spiritual machinery of the end of the last 2,000 years of patriarchal religion, if you will, of Christianity and Buddhism and many other religions, and that he was seeing them being replaced with what is to come for the next 2,000 years, which in Crowley's mind was much more about individual spiritual liberation and the destruction of all of the old control religions.
Well, and everything in his life at that point was focused on the completion of these ceremonies, which he tried to do nearly every day, right? And he bought the house on Loch Ness. He put the sand in the yard. He wanted to all of these things were built around him to complete this ceremony. And I just found that part of Crowley fascinating. And I'm not sure, and I appreciate what you're saying here, but I'm not sure that even what he has shared publicly is actually what happened. I don't think I think it was a personal experience.
Well, of course. I mean, all magic is a personal experience,
right,
and a subjective experience.
Right.
And one of the good things about Crowley is that he was such a well-trained and good writer and could leave, good records. But yeah, I mean, but the ritual you're talking about is the Abramelin ritual, which is different. It's separate from the Enochian material that was in Scotland in 1903 to 1904 or so, and this was 1907 in Algeria. But yeah, I mean, you can say a lot about Crowley. Lots of ink has been spilled about Crowley. I, summarize his goods and his bads, and there were some very bads in the book. But one thing you can't say about Crowley, who of course remains controversial to this day, is that he was insincere. I think that he went full on into this stuff almost in an obsessive way. Obsessively in a detailed and perhaps scientific or at least empirical way assessing this stuff. And he could because he not only had the privilege of such a good education, but he also had a lot of inherited family money So he never had to work in his life. He spent his entire life just doing magic, until the money ran out. Well, then he kept doing it, of course, but on a much lower budget and in much more desperate straits.
Now we've got to do this Jack Parsons part, because JPL is here, and Parsons and Pasadena and Glendale and Burbank. It's a part of our daily lives today. But this was a very serious thing for Jack Parsons, and some of these, whether they're urban legends or it's fact, these things actually happened. When I say urban legends, portals opening up in the Mojave Desert, I don't know, how accurate that stuff is, but certainly Parsons' interest in it was as sincere as anybody's, and he ran in those circles.
Absolutely. So yeah, Parsons, what can we say about this guy? This is one of the most colorful and amazing characters in all of Magick. So Parsons was, born in Pasadena in the early part of the 20th century. He was, a rocket scientist, a science fiction fan. He was 6 feet tall, dashingly handsome. You have to imagine perhaps Elon Musk crossed with Crowley crossed with Abby Hoffman or somebody like that. He was a real anarchist.
Right.
And Parsons Parsons is responsible for the early rocketry program, where he was interested in producing rockets when nobody was interested in it. And his group of rocket enthusiasts became what we now know as NASA JPL, Jet Propulsion Labs. He founded. He is the person that invented solid state rocket fuel, which is responsible for putting us on the moon, and also was the fuel driving ICBM nuclear missiles in the 60s and 70s. And he was also a science fiction fan. He was a friend to Ray Bradbury and all these early science fiction writers, and a great patron of them. He was also a practicing occultist. He was the head of the OTO, which was Crowley's magical group in Los Angeles, and spent his days working on rockets and his nights doing occult rituals, a lot of which was Enochian. That was his primary focus.
Now, how can we clear up some of these occult rituals and some of these stories about Jack, like portals and communication and what he was exposed to? How much of it actually happened?
Oh, it all happened. And what you're talking about is an infamous ritual that he did called the Babylon working.
That's right.
In the Mojave Desert with the help of a special somebody we know as LRH or L. Ron Hubbard. He spent, so Parsons and Hubbard, who was kind of his protege, who was a confidence trickster who had shown up at Parsons' digs and quickly charmed him and got him under his spell. Parsons and Hubbard were engaged in trying to talk to Babylon, and Babylon is kind of the central goddess of the entire Enochian system. Who appeared to Dee and Kelly and appeared to Crowley in their respective workings. And Parsons saw Babylon as kind of the inversion of the Virgin Mary, and the female goddess at her most unshackled, and the dark goddess, and he saw her as a figure of social liberation and female liberation, and a symbol of women over the worldwide rising up out of their patriarchal shackles and destroying the old patriarchal order. And he's writing about this in the 40s.
Right.
It had already begun happening, but it really started to kick in the coming decades, of course, and is still, that's a war that's being fought right now, wonderfully. And but they wanted to contact this goddess directly, and Parsons certainly thought that he had, but in the process he lost everything. I mean, Hubbard ran off with his girlfriend, ran off with his money, ran off with his yacht. Parsons lost his job. He was left destitute. I mean, he really took it to the abyss, as they say in the occult tradition.
And then, of course, with that boat in Florida, we have today Scientology. And isn't that an interesting part of this entire saga? Let's Let's take a break right here, Jason, and if you will, let's do a little bit of overtime because we got to talk about the death of Parsons. And, well, let's do this after the break because I have my ideas about what actually happened at his home up in Pasadena. And let's continue all the way through modern day cult history, I guess is the way we want to put it here with John Dee. This is Fade to Black. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. Jason, stay right there.
To my boy, Jimmy Church, on JimmyChurchRadio.com.
Despite popular opinion, reading a book will not make you smarter. But listening to Jimmy Church will.
So you went to dinner last night and you had your favorite pasta. Ugh. Or maybe you had a heavy, spicy meal and it left you. Ugh. Get the tea.com. Maybe you mowed down a huge steak and your plumbing is all plugged. Ugh. Get the tea.com. Our super strength tea will take care of your occasional. Ugh. It's all organic and non-GMO. Get rid of. Ugh. We have so many great supplements, but our super tea is number one. GetTheT.com. That's GetTheT.com.
So, you love talk radio? Then you'll love TalkStreamLive.com. TalkStream Live is always on, 24/7 with the best streaming talk shows. Find your favorite talkers and discover some new ones. It's free, readily available online or on mobile with any smartphone or tablet. Finding your favorite talk shows all in one place has gotten a whole lot easier. Just go to TalkStreamLive.com. Be sure to download the free apps from Google Play or the iTunes App Store.
When you take the beans from Central America with dashes of Indonesian and African mixed in and then roast it to the dark side of Fade to Black, you create the ultimate brew of fringe. Introducing the Fade to Black blend from Rivermoon Coffee. Yes, Rivermoon's darkest customized roast was created for the love of Fade to Black. The alchemy of masterful roasting and smoking the beans is in every sip of this full-bodied, dark Java. I need my coffee dark, deep, with distinct bittersweet chocolate highlights, just like the bunker. Leaning further into the darkness of the roast is Fade to Black blend from Rivermoon Coffee. Just click on the banner at JimmyChurchRadio.com and use the promo code F2BBLEND for 15% off of your order today. Go Beckley Teppy.
Hey, can we talk about something serious for a minute? Your age. Getting old has its perks. But remember, being a few years younger, you know, your hair was thicker, you didn't have so many wrinkles, that extra weight wasn't haunting you, and you just felt better. Well, we can't turn back the clocks and go back 10 or 15 years, but you can start feeling and looking 10 or 15 years younger with Nature's Youth RSF. It's a doctor-formulated daily supplement that helps your body maintain its peak performance and fight the aging process. Imagine sleeping better, looking better, and feeling better. See how Nature's Youth RSF has helped thousands of people just like you at nature'syouth.com. nature'syouth.com. The holidays are coming. Imagine how it will feel when your family and friends are asking you what you did to look so good. Your secret will be Nature's Youth RSF. It's time to start looking better and feeling better. Learn more and order your Nature's Youth RSF at nature'syouth.com. That's nature'syouth.com.
It's not a lifestyle we chose. We were born this way. KGRARadio.com.
This is KJCR at JimmyChurchRadio.com.
All right, welcome back. Fade to Black. Our guest tonight, Jason Louv. You can follow me on Twitter, Jimmy Church, at JChurchRadio. You can follow Jason at Jason Louv. He's tweeting, Jason, it's really cool, man. You're in the sandbox. I really dig that, man.
Yeah, there's some great comments coming in. People are really, really enjoying the show.
It's amazing. And you can see some of these questions, and I've got them lined up here, too, as well. So we'll try to get them in before the end of the show tonight. But here's what a slight recap, very condensed, but it's amazing when you think about it. John Dee influencing not only Queen Elizabeth and creating the vision of the British Empire, the science side of it, eventually through scrying, and influencing so many societies, all the way from the Freemasons, the Illuminati, the Rosicrucians, the Golden Dawn, the OTO, all the way through to the moon. Right? I mean, let's understand what we are talking about here. John Dee was absolutely incredible, and the story and the connecting of the dots is an easy one to follow. But that's exactly John Dee's influence.
Yeah, I mean, when we think about John Dee's work creating naval expansion to the New World, and doing this Enochian magic and opening up the Age of Empires, and then just 400 years later, which is really the blink of an eye, Jack Parsons doing the same thing and opening up the space race. And both of them doing Enochian magic. I mean, why do we not hear this in school?
Exactly. Now, the Jack Parsons death. Now, see, you brought up solid fuel, right? Well, the official story is that he blew up his own house. And he died. His mother, Ruth, the second that she heard about his death, she commits suicide, right? His wife allegedly comes home, she's grocery shopping, and finds out about everything, the house is burnt down. I'm not so sure if that's the real story. What do you think happened?
Well, yeah, I mean, the official story is that he was working on, so at this time he was making money because he'd lost his security clearance and his job, and he was making money doing explosives for Hollywood. And so he and his wife, Marjorie Cameron, were about to leave for Mexico. And he was, or possibly Israel, I got to double check that. And he was doing a last minute rush order. And what happened was a vial of fulminate of mercury slipped out of his hand. And of course, that's very volatile, and then it blew him up. Now, by the way, fulminate of mercury, if you've ever seen Breaking Bad, one of my favorite TV shows ever, there's a scene in the first season of Breaking Bad where Heisenberg, Walter White, has a piece of something that looks like crystal methamphetamine. It's a little crystal that he throws at a drug dealer's den, and the whole thing blows up. That's fulminate of mercury. That's what that does. If you've ever happened to see that episode. So Parsons has a vial of this. It slips out of his hand. He blows up. That's the official story. Conspiracy theories have certainly circulated about that. It's possible that he had a lot of enemies. It's possible that, people didn't want him leaving the U.S. and bringing rocketry and explosives information to other governments, and particularly Israel. It's possible that, the LAPD did not like him a whole lot because he had testified as an explosives witness in a case against a former captain of the LAPD, which certainly didn't win him any friends. But, I got to tell you, having been around the occult world for as long as I have, you see, after a while, you see how the sausage is made. You see, when you first start learning about this stuff, it's easy to get kind of grandiose ideas about these all-powerful sorcerers and things like that. Well, the real occult world it's just people, right? And a lot of times in the occult world, people are not the most grounded. And one of the deals with Parsons is he was a regular drug user. He used cocaine a lot. He used morphine. He probably used methamphetamine. It's possible he may have been making methamphetamine because he was a chemist. And one of his friends this is reported in a biography of him. One of his friends in his rocketry club talks about Parsons' hands sweating all the time, which suggests drug use, right? Suggests stimulants, amphetamines, or possibly cocaine, but probably amphetamines. And also at the blast site, there was a syringe, an empty syringe of morphine that they had found. So it's possible he was just on drugs and he got sloppy and the thing slipped out of his hand. You know, sometimes the most obvious answer is the right one, you know, but we don't know. It's possible. You know, certainly people would have had motivations to make sure he didn't leave the country.
Yeah,
it's possible.
He was. My memory says that he had a contract with the Mexican government. He was getting ready. He was broke, right? And he was going to set up some munitions factory or something.
It was Israel, actually. He was going to do
Israel?
that for the Israelis. He was going to work on their rocketry program.
It was probably both. So there.
Who knows?
Yeah. So now here we are today, where we have got the Rosicrucians and the Freemasons are here, and that the John Dee writings and influence is a global thing now. How much of it is influencing government decisions today around the world?
I'm not a conspiracy type thinker, so I don't think that it really is, but what I will directly, and what I mean by that is like people are sitting behind closed doors reading Dee's diaries and going, aha, like now we have the secrets. Right. But what I will say is that those ideas, the ideas themselves absolutely have an influence on government policy. And I write about that at length in the book. And that's kind of one of the most shocking things about it. And all of this stuff is in plain sight. It's not like it's conspiratorial.
Right.
So what I mean by that is that one of Dee's core ideas was, or the angels' ideas, if you want to look at it that way, is that the apocalypse should be hastened, that we should accelerate the towards the end of the Bible, towards the book of Revelation, and bring about the apocalypse to kind of get it over with. Because the sooner that happens, the sooner Jesus comes back. Well, that's a pretty intense idea, but it certainly didn't stay in Dee's work, and it certainly didn't stay in, heretical Protestant groups of the time. Well, when you understand that America was settled by Protestant evangelicals, well, that's the idea that's been running the American government. If you look at Ronald Reagan, ushering America through a period of mutually assured destruction with Russia, while all the while believing that it was his sacred duty to, fight the war with Russia to bring about, to get America through the apocalypse, and George Bush Jr. thinking that he needed to go into Iraq to bring about the apocalypse, or maybe perhaps the bombing in Syria today. And one of the things about being an American and living in America that I think other countries probably laugh at us for, quite honestly, having traveled in the UK and Europe a lot, is that evangelical theology has such a big role in American governmental policy, and that throughout many presidential administrations, not all of them, but many of them have truly believed that the events of the Book of Revelation are real, and that not only that they're real, but that it's their job to make them real. And that's something they certainly share in common with John Dee, that they share in common with, to some extent, with Aleister Crowley, and the whole Western occult tradition. So one of the most shocking things about this book was understanding that there's really not a whole lot of difference between what we think of as the esoteric or occult side of Western civilization and the big plan, Western civilization in general. It's all one thing. But one of the good things about being a journalist and and writing a book on history, by the way, is understanding that the truth is way weirder than any conspiracy theory. I think that even people who have conspiracy theories about stuff, all you have to do is go back and look at what actually happened in the actual history, and it's way weirder than anything that anyone's coming up with on, Infowars.com or something like that. So
I'm so with you. I know. I'm so with you on that. And it's just been a fascinating conversation tonight. And I've got to get some of these questions in here from the audience, and I've got so many. So let's go through these. Let's see how many we can get in. Jimmy, please ask Jason if Occidental science is genuinely independent from Judeo-Christian worldviews. Does it exist separately in its own right, or is it more honestly just a part of the same coin?
That's a great question. I don't think they're certainly in their origins or the origin of science. No, they're not separate at all. It's all one big continuum. And Carl Jung thought that the rise of science, that science was actually a response. It was an outgrowth of Christianity, the Judeo-Christian tradition, where people became very despondent that just faith alone had not really solved the problems of Europe, and that manifested as the drive towards Hermeticism and then science and alchemy and all that. That's what Jung thought. Now, in terms of today, I think they are separate today. But one of the things that I argue in this book is, we still are a Judeo-Christian culture. And just because church attendance is down and people are not openly believers doesn't mean that they're still not running off the same fundamental assumptions, right? Because Western civilization is set up to, for instance, be teleological, meaning yearn towards an end point. So even though, for instance, most people nowadays would not claim that they're openly Christian, at least, scientists, things like this. Well, even the parts of Western civilization that no longer think they're Christian are still trying to cause the apocalypse. I mean, Marxism, for instance, which is not religious at all, still yearns towards the Marxist apocalypse, the inevitability of communism. It still has this core messianic myth. Science with transhumanism, right? Transhumanism is yearning towards the singularity, right? Now, what's that other than messianic apocalyptic thinking? So even in our culture is Judeo-Christian, and we just can't get away from that. That's like our cultural DNA. So you can't just stop going to church and say you're not Christian anymore. It's like if you come from that culture, then it just forms your fundamental your fundamental take on things, unless you examine that stuff very, very clearly, which most people don't. So I hope that answers that question.
Jimmy, I have a postgraduate degree in science, and I've often felt that Western science is inextricably linked to Judeo-Christian worldview, so much that even self-proclaimed atheist scientists are on simply a quest to quantify the mind of God. What do you think about that, Jason?
100% accurate. And I think that I draw out the history of that. It's very well put, and I draw out the specific history of that in this book. I think it's 100% accurate.
What is Jason's take on the Hermetic collective consciousness?
I'm not sure what that means.
Did I read it wrong? What is the Hermetic take on collective consciousness?
Oh, I see. Well, that's an interesting question. Well, I think that, well, that's a big one, right? I think that the Hermetic tradition would certainly see individual consciousnesses as part of a greater whole, that our individual loci of consciousnesses are part of the much bigger consciousness that is humanity as a whole, which is God as a whole, and which is part of God as a whole. And the great Hermetic dictum is as above, so below, meaning that every individual human is, as we read in the Bible, is made in God's image, so therefore is a reflection of higher reality, and that perhaps even looking within into your own psyche and your own mind and your own body, you might detect the signature and the likeness of the Creator I think that's the Hermetic take on it. And I think that certainly Carl Jung, who coined the phrase collective unconscious to describe how ideas could pass between minds seemingly through a psychic phenomenon, Jung really was a great researcher of the Hermetica and of alchemy and of magic. And he really kind of just scraped the surface of it, or maybe perhaps just talked about the part that he could kind of get away with at the time, bearing his political climate in mind. But all those theories, the theory of the collective unconscious itself comes out of Carl Jung's investigation of the occult and comes out of Carl Jung, for instance, interacting with patients therapeutically who would be talking about having dreams of alchemical symbols like a winged egg, for instance, or an egg encircled by a serpent. And Jung would say, well, hang on, that's an occult symbol, but you've never seen that before in your life. So how is an occult symbol popping up in the dream of somebody who's never seen that symbol?
Right. Check this out. This is a good question right here. Can Mr. Louv comment on the later compilations of Dee's work that seems to incorporate a number of apparently chthonic entities? Cthulhu.
Well, I think what he might be talking about is there were some books written by Donald Tyson, who is a occult researcher who's written about both Lovecraft and Dee and has mixed in Lovecraftian elements into Dee's stuff. But that's Tyson's individual idiosyncrasy. There's no, Lovecraftian stuff in any of the original Dee texts. One of the great things about our current cultural moment is that there's so much more accurate information coming out because of the internet. We have access to original texts that have been out of print for long periods of time, and we can go back and look at these things with much more precision. Whereas, in the 70s and the 80s, people were just kind of, people like Kenneth Grant and other authors like that were just kind of like making it up on the fly and throwing in Lovecraft stuff or Hollywood stuff, and there wasn't a whole lot of academic rigor. There's a lot more academic rigor now than there used to be.
Will your next book, you're reading this in Twitter, so you know what's coming up. Will your next book be about Jack Parsons?
Stay tuned. That's all I'll say.
You gotta love the internet. Last question is this, and you know what? So much has been made about this over the years, not only from L. Ron Hubbard but others. So let's clear the air on this because I've heard both sides. Did L. Ron Hubbard ever meet Crowley?
No, he never did.
He never did.
No.
But
neither did Parsons, by the way.
Right.
They only communicated by mail.
So the three of them were never together.
Nope.
Did L. Ron Hubbard say that he hung out with Crowley?
No.
Oh. Okay, no. So this is all urban legend then.
Not that I know of. I mean, Hubbard said a lot of stuff.
Okay.
Maybe he did, and I don't know. I mean, I'm not like a super L. Ron Hubbard expert, so
right.
But not to my knowledge.
Okay, now
he might have though. I don't know. It's worth a Google search.
Was Crowley ever a fan of Hubbard?
Oh, Crowley hated Hubbard. Crowley, there's an infamous letter where he says, because Parsons was, you have to remember, he wasn't that young. He was old enough to know better, but he was young enough that he was still very naive and had stars in his eyes and really believed it all and was on drugs all the time. He wasn't a very grounded or rigorous person. And in fact, he made a lot of mistakes in his magic, which are grievous errors, which I write about in the book. So he was kind of sloppy. But he was really taken in by Hubbard, who was able to convince him of all this stuff, convince him that he was a great magician, and, just play, confidence trickster games with Parsons. And Parsons was too dumb to see it, but Crowley was not, because Crowley had been around the block, and it was kind of like, Crowley had done a lot of that stuff himself, so he knew what he was looking for. And Crowley wrote at one point, suspect... to other OTO people, suspect that Jack has been taken in by, run-of-the-mill confidence tricks and that type of thing by Suspect Ron. That was Crowley's phrase for L. Ron, Suspect Ron.
Now,
so he was not a fan of him.
Are you looking at Twitter right now? I want to ask you about Lamb really quick. I don't know.
Lamb.
Yeah.
Yes, infamous.
Yeah, the infamous. And I I like everybody else. I look at Lamb, and I'm certainly think that I'm looking at E.T. I'm looking at a modern gray. What do you think Lamb represents?
Yeah, so Lamb, for those who don't know it, so Crowley decided to become an artist at a certain point in his life. And in the 1910s, he did a magical working with some of his students called the Amelantra working to contact some disincarnate intelligences. And around that time or after that, he drew a picture that looks like dead on like the modern depictions of gray aliens. It looks like the cover of Communion.
It does. It does.
Schreiber, like dead on, and it's eerie. It's like, and that image never came out until the 80s, right? Not the drawing, but people didn't start using that image of the gray aliens until the 80s. It hadn't, and it became obviously very popular in our culture in the 80s and 90s, and then actually quite mysteriously just disappeared again. I mean, you never see people talking about the gray aliens anymore, not like they used to, where it was like on everything, stickers on people's backpacks, like everywhere.
Right.
And then it just kind of disappeared. That was quite odd too. But now we have this picture from the 1910s of a gray alien being drawn by a guy who's spending all of his time trying to contact non-human intelligences. Well, that's a little odd. But in terms of what Lamb really is, I will give you one hint and one hint only, which is turn the picture upside down. I won't tell you what it is, but try it yourself.
Oh, man. Hold on a minute. You're going to make me reverse this image. Okay, I'll do it right now. Okay. All right. Let's do that. Let's see. Here it is. I'm going to do this in real time, everybody. All right. Let me pull this into an editor. And boom. Done. Yes. Okay. And here it is. Let's edit. Yes, I want to flip. Okay. Okay, I've got it upside down.
You might not want to say it on the radio. It's a little lewd.
Oh, really? You think so?
Joel, I'll let people make their own conclusions.
Okay. That's interesting. That's interesting.
Right?
Okay. All right. Could be. It's not as fun as, well, I don't know. It could be more fun. I don't know if it... Jason, fascinating conversation. Where are you going to be speaking? Are you going to be out? I know you're doing your book tour. Are you still out doing that? Where are you going to be speaking next?
Yeah, I just got back from Seattle. I'm hoping to do an event in Los Angeles very shortly. No dates have not been announced, but I am doing stuff online all the time. The best place to find out about all of this is jasonlouv.com. And so there you can see all of my social media. Please follow me on social media to stay abreast of what I'm up to. You can see my school for magic, magic.me, where I have video trainings in all of the stuff that we're talking about. Astral projection, chaos magic, yoga, meditation, and Enochian magic. I just this week released a class on Enochian, which is available for everybody. And there's also a free class on Magick, which is a 7-day email class, which contains podcasts and video trainings and guided meditations, and will tell you how to make, do occult rituals and make sigils and get into do real meditation and everything that you need to know to start. And you can get that very easily, by the way. All you have to do to get that is text the word shaman, so SHAMAN, shaman, to the phone number 44222. So it's the phone number 44222, the word shaman, and it will just text you back and ask you for your email address, and then once you put that in, it will send you the class. How's that for a magic trick?
Man, that is total mystery schools stuff going on for the modern age. Well played, my friend. Great conversation tonight, and I can't wait. So what we did tonight, everybody, I'll just let you know, we did a lot of general conversation to get through parts of this book. But with Jason, there is everything else that he does that we can go into at depth at a later date, and we're going to do just that.
And I forgot. How could I forget? I forgot to mention the book. I forgot to plug the book.
Oh, yeah.
How could I? Sorry. So the book is called John Dee and the Empire of Angels. It has been blowing up on Amazon. It's already in its third printing. It's a giant hardback, and it's a beautiful book. And so I'm a bit biased, but that's what people are telling me. And so you can just find that on Amazon, Google John, or just look, search John Dee on Amazon, John Dee and the Empire of Angels, or there's a website for it, which is johnd007.com, and that has all the options to order it.
We have all of those links, by the way, up at jimmychurchradio.com, and you can go and get the book. I highly recommend it. It is an amazing read. Jason Louv, amazing conversation.
That was great. Thank you again for having me on. I'm greatly honored.
Thank you, Jason, and I can't wait to not only hang out, we're neighbors, but I can't wait to get you back on the show again. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Jason Louv, everybody. We took it to the very end. I've got to roll credits and get out of here. Great conversation tonight, and the links are up over at jimmychurchradio.com. Let's do this. Let's get out of here. Fade to Black's executive producer is Rita Kamarian. Show is produced by, and for some reason my music is not running, Hilton J. Palm, Renee, Dennis, and Bob. Announcers are Steve Harder, Gene Vito, and Mark D. Kovar. Webmaster Drew the Geek. Music Doug Aldrich. Intro Spaceboy. SpaceboyMusic.com. Fade to Black is produced by KJCR for the Game Changer Network. Syndication is KGRA, The Planet. This broadcast is only copyrighted 2018 by Fade to Black and the Game Changer Network. It cannot be rebroadcast, downloaded, copied, or used anywhere in the known universe without written permission from Fade to Black or the Game Changer Network. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. Follow me on Twitter at JChurchRadio. We'll see everybody tomorrow night right here. Fade to Black, Fader Night. Until then, be safe. Go Beckley Teppy.